to include math practitioners because we need that in the future.
All right, buenos dias. Good morning to everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Afuera hay nubes, pero aquí dentro, puro sol. Cloudy outside, but sunny inside. Thanks to you. We appreciate the opportunity to engage you in a very important dialogue that I think is key to moving the narrative in a positive direction across the United States. I think it starts with the voice of El Paso. It starts with the voice of Southern New Mexico. It starts with the voice of our sister city across the border. Todos juntos, all of us together, I think have the opportunity to speak with one voice in terms of the benefits of biliteracy. Ser bilingüe, ser una persona que tiene orgullo por su cultura, su idioma, y a la vez be an advocate for equity and social justice for our students, for our children, for nuestras familias. So I appreciate all of you being here today to join us in this conversation as we go forward, because there's a lot of work to do. There's some great strides that have been made here in El Paso and in the state of Texas, but there's so much room for growth. Starting with our community, across the state of Texas, and the country. I left a handout for you to pick up next to the sign-in sheets. Hopefully you got it. It's got some data that was shared with us by TEA a couple of weeks ago when Anabel Tanabe and I went around to get some training there on English learner program implementation. You're welcome. And as we reviewed the data, I just want to point out a couple of things, because you know, in education, we have a lot of acronyms. And so I just want to make sure that we all understand, you know, what some of these acronyms might be. First of all, on the top row, you have the word region. And down below that, I just want you to know that Texas is divided into 20 regions, 1 through 20. Here in El Paso and Hudspeth County, we comprise Region 19. The next column tells us the total number of English learners in each region. So you can see how our region compares to the total number of ELs compared to other regions. Then you have the total percentage of English learners. Notice, though other regions may have a greater number of English learners, we have the second highest concentration of English learners, where 29% of our students are English learners here in Region 19. Percent of immigrant English learners is the next column. And then we start with the participation of English learners in different kinds of program models, starting with dual language instruction, one-way and two-way. Then the next two columns, transitional bilingual education, early exit and late exit. And then we have the ESL content-based and the ESL pull-out program model. And the final column is English learners not served, which basically represents parent denials. So I want us to notice, when we look at Region 19, we recognize that we have the second highest concentration of English learners. But one of the data points that I see there that really upsets me, that we need to be concerned about, is that we have the highest number of parent denials in the state. A lot of times, when I was in the classroom trying to advocate for English learners and trying to make sure that our English learners get the support that they need, many times I was aware that even within our own ranks, some teachers would advise the parents, you know what, nomás ponle allí English. And we need to change that. We need to make sure that our parents are making an informed decision. Because when English learners get the support that they need, enter into the services that are going to meet their unique cognitive, linguistic, and affective needs, then they're going to be successful. Because data also shows that those English learners in Region 19 that get the support that they need, for example, grade 3, in Region 19, we have the second highest meet standards in terms of reading for grade 3. That's pretty good for a region that has a high number of English learners in terms of the concentration. We also have the highest meet standards for math in grade 3. So when we have English learners that are actually being served, they're able to meet standard. So imagine how much higher that meet standard would be if those parent denials were not there. Estamos aquí esta mañana para hablar de cosas muy importantes, claves acerca del bilingüismo. We have a distinguished panel here that I must say I had nothing to do with getting them together, because that credit is deserved by Anabel Tanabe. Where is Anabel? She disappeared. There she is. Let's give her a round of applause. Anabel Tanabe and our colleague Gabriela Camacho had a lot to do with putting this event together. Ms. Camacho was not able to join us today, but she's here with us in spirit. See all these decorations that are there? A lot of that was her creativity. Her and Anabel came together with putting some of those nice, delicious snacks for you. They may not be very healthy, but but they're very good. So es parte de nuestra cultura. Y esas galletas, fíjense las galletas. Yeah, a very nice touch, right? Yeah. Tienen palabras en inglés y en español. So be sure to enjoy those as we engage in this conversation about the importance of biliteracy. When you have a chance, I invite you to go to those two posters on that wall that give you some additional information about the benefits of a bilingual brain. Tenemos en inglés y en español. Take a moment to reflect on that. What are the things that we can do together to make sure that our parents make informed decisions as we tell them about the benefits of a bilingual brain? That's the conversation we're going to have today. We have a distinguished panel that we're about to introduce that will give us an array of the expertise that we have here today. Thank you so very much, panelists, for coming here, from near and far, and joining us to be here to have this great conversation. So let me go ahead and begin by introducing. híjole, mi mamá me va a castigar porque ni les dije quién soy yo. No les digan a mi mamá porque entonces me jalan las orejas. Mi nombre es José Antonio Velázquez. I am the Director of Academic Instruction and School Support here at Region 19, and it's a pleasure to welcome you here today for this very important conversation. So it is my pleasure to begin to introduce to you, and I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to read every single aspect of the bios that I have here, otherwise we'll stay about half an hour into this, because they have a lot of expertise and a lot of experiences. Just look them up, Google them, or como se dice en español, googlealo, right? It is my pleasure to introduce to our far, or to your far right, Dr. Jennifer Hahn. Dr. Hahn is a visiting assistant professor in the School of Teacher Preparation, Administration, and Leadership at New Mexico State University. She has held various administrative positions in K-12 in California, New Mexico, and Texas, including school site administrator and central office administrator, overseeing programs for English learners and multilingual programs. The focus of her research is social justice leadership as related to the experiences of Asian American students in the K-12 public education system. Another research focus is addressing the ways in which educational leaders address equity of education for English learners. Annabelle will introduce our next panelist.
Okay, so I'm going to introduce Mr. Fernando Garcia. So if you want to raise your hand, Mr. Garcia. Mr. Garcia was, I had to ask his wife for a bio because when he sent me a bio, it was like this. It was like 2 sentences, very humble, very humble. But we do want to highlight the fact that, you know, he grew up in Ciudad Juarez and attended school in Mexico until the 3rd grade. And then at the age of 10, he moved to El Paso. So he too is an English learner. And unfortunately, he was in a subtractive bilingual education system where English was the push and English was more important. However, his family always knew that being bilingual was important, and so they pushed him at home. And he has always persevered, he pushed himself, and that's why he's on our panel. He has held many positions in human resources, and I can't wait till he tells you about the interview process he had to go through to hold the job that he's currently in with Verizon. Right now he is a consultant human resource business partner, long title, with Verizon. And he has 15 years of HR experience and management. And also he has a little boy, Santiago, and I know the little boy, he's a pleasure. And they believe, he and his wife believe in raising a child who is truly bilingual and biliterate. And that has always been an importance to him. So he is enrolled in a dual language program. And I have a little quote here from his son. It says, "I like to speak 2 languages because if a person doesn't understand me in 1 language, I can use my 2nd language to communicate." And he's only in 1st grade.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And we also have Dr. Elena Izquierdo, who is sitting right there in the center, in the middle. Dr. Izquierdo is a linguist by training. She holds a PhD in applied linguistics and bilingual education from Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. She's also an educator in practice with 13 years as an administrator in Washington, D.C. Public schools. She served as the principal of one of the first national dual language bilingual education models in this country. The Oyster Bilingual Elementary School in Washington, D.C., and she also served director for bilingual ESL education, leading the education of emergent bilinguals, English learners, and continues to guide and collaborate with districts across the state in implementing district-wide dual language bilingual education. Dr. Izquierdo's expertise, research, and experience are in the areas of leadership in dual language bilingual education, biliteracy, and transforming schooling ideologies and practices for emergent bilinguals, ELs. Her most current book publication is entitled Dual Language Education, Teaching and Leading Through 2 Languages. Dr. Izquierdo developed the dual language bilingual education competencies and participated in the development and reviewer for the 2019 National Guiding Principles for Dual Language Education. Dr. Izquierdo has been on various state and national boards. She is a faculty member at the University of Texas at El Paso in teacher education, in the Faculty of Bilingual Biliteracy EL education at the undergraduate and doctoral levels. Please, let's welcome Dr. Izquierdo.
We also have Mr. Miguel Rosas. And so Mr. Rosas was born in Los Angeles, California, but then his family moved here to El Paso when he was 5 years old. However, he was lucky enough that he was in a dual language program. He attended Alicia Chacon International School and Del Valle, yay! And Del Valle High School in Isleta Independent School District. And he graduated from the University of Texas at El Paso with a bachelor's degree in civil engineering. And Miguel went on to become the Parks and Public Works Director for the City of Socorro, then Project Manager for Jordan Foster Construction, and currently he is the Project Manager for the City of El Paso's Capital Improvement Department. Whatever that means. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. It's very impressive. Thank you. Miguel values being bilingual and biliterate as he can communicate with all of our city leaders, developers, and contracted companies. Above all, being bilingual, he can communicate with the citizens of the city of El Paso during community meetings, phone calls, and during visits to city projects. He can often put people at ease with their concerns because he can speak to them in Spanish. And what I wanted to highlight for you is that he's also a published author. This is from when he was in high school. Yes, this is called The History of El Paso, Famous Places, a bilingual picture book for children, written and illustrated by Del Valle High School dual language arts students. And he's got, you know, his people, his co-authors, I guess. And so when his wife, he was also very humble. His wife brought this to us. And we just had to highlight all the work that, you know, obviously this is really, really neat, something for your kids, you know. So thank you so much for being here, Mr. Rosas.
And finally, our fifth panelist, Georgina Cecilia Perez, a proud Democrat who is the State Board of Education representative for District 1. She represents students, parents, and educators in 40 counties in West Texas and over 900 miles along the Texas-Mexico border. She was elected to a 4-year term on the board on November 8, 2016, and elected to serve as secretary in 2019. She also serves on the Committee of Instruction, which oversees curriculum instruction, student testing, special education programs, and alternatives to social promotion. Perez is an El Paso native, and she's a proud graduate of Eastwood High School in the Isleta Independent School District. She served as an 8th grade English language arts and reading teacher, department chair, pre-service and youth service teacher mentor, and professional development educator in the same district for more than a decade. Perez holds educator certifications in English language arts and reading for grades 8 to 12, and generalist certifications for grades 4 through 8 from the University of Texas at El Paso. Yes, she holds degrees in business administration, accounting, and human resources development. Perez was instrumental in creating the most aligned reading and language arts, English and Spanish standards in our state's history. Let's give her a hand for that, yes. But also something that is very near and dear to me is that she spearheaded a policy creating a statewide course in Mexican American Studies. About time, right? As well as developing a fast track for additional ethnic studies courses and making Texas the only state in the nation to offer the course to all high school students. Perez is known as a passionate advocate for literacy, which is why we are very glad to have her voice in addition to the other 4 voices in our panel. Let's give Ms. Perez a round of applause. Thank you.
And I think we started out a little shy, so we owe Dr. Han an applause. Plus, she traveled the furthest, too. Thank you. Okay, and so the last person I get to introduce is our wonderful moderator, Dr. Reynaldo Reyes. He's over here getting prepared. So Dr. Reyes is an associate professor of education at the University of Texas at El Paso. Always where for 15 years he has taught courses in bilingual, ESL, and multicultural education, and conducted research in migrant education and the social-cultural roles in academic language, literacy, and identity. Dr. Reyes is an award-winning poet, writer, and teacher. In 2010, he won the University of Texas Regents Outstanding Teacher Award for Excellence in undergraduate teaching, one of the most competitive teaching awards for college professors in the United States. In 2012, he was awarded the Fulbright Scholar Award to Pontificia Universidad Católica en Santiago, Chile. Dr. Reyes was also awarded the 2014 American Educational Studies Association Critics' Choice Book Award for the book Learning the Possible, Mexican American Students Moving from the Margins of Life to New Ways of Being. And most importantly, Dr. Reyes, he is a husband to his wife of 21 years and the father of 3 children. So welcome, Dr. Reyes. And with that, we are ready when you are, Dr. Reyes. He's the man of the 2 hours.
Thank you, everyone, for coming today for this important forum to speak on the benefits of biliteracy and bilingualism. And I want to begin with a question on the state of education, setting the stage. The first question I have for our panelists is to set the stage is what is the current state of education for emergent bilinguals and English learners today for us that you can speak to from the education side, from the business side, from the community side? Talk about that, please.
I'll start, if that's okay. This is on, sorry.
Hello. Thank you very much. First of all, I want to say that I think we've made a lot of gains in the field in moving for equity for our English learners, but we're not there yet. All right, we're not there yet. I do want to contextualize today's talk in the orientation that Richard Gross gave us in 1984 when he talked about looking at language as a problem, right? Think about it. What did we used to call our English learners before? What? Like they're diseased, right? Lep, right? So we looked at it as a problem. The minute we knew that they didn't speak English, we thought, oh, he doesn't know English, standards go down. And the rigor went down. And we saw it as problematic. Then Richard Gross talks about the fact that language is now a compliance type thing. We went to English Learner, right? We went to English Learner, which was an improvement on LEP, right? LEP is a bad word, now don't use it anymore. But English Learner, brought in compliance. What do you all do with TELPAS, right? What do we do with TELPAS? Okay, we won't go there, but it's TELPAS, it's compliance, and it's learn English. But in using the term English learner, we're still not recognizing the first language of a child. So we're not there yet, which is why we're transitioning, thank goodness for Ofelia Garcia out of CUNY, right, who gave us the term emergent bilingual. So when we say emergent bilingual, then we're really recognizing both languages. So I invite the region to start making that transition. Not just English learner, because that's just focusing on English, but let's validate our children, their culture, their identity. So I want to contextualize it here. Then I want to talk about equity real quickly, as we all talk about everything in a minute. Equity is important. We've moved a lot further, but I want you to think of the achievement gap that the National Association of Educational Progress tells us all the time, that our English learners, emergent bilinguals, are the furthest behind. Right? But that achievement gap comes from other gaps. So I'm going to give the 3 to you as we talk this morning, think about it. Number 1 is we have a gap in our professional development when it comes to English learners, emergent bilinguals. What, we get 1 training, 2 trainings? What do we get? Teacher preparation programs, we're moving there. Principal preparation programs, how much training did you get there? Administrators and all that. So we have a PB gap that leads and contributes to the achievement gap of our emergent bilinguals. The second gap we have is resources, right? We have a lot at the elementary level now, and that's awesome, and thank you, Georgina, for the side-by-side ELAR SLAR. But our middle schools and high schools, we still need to support that, right? But the resources, I want to say this. Something comes out with computers, we give them to our Ls and expect them to do well, because they have computers. Or we'll talk about Read 180. Read 180, when it first came out, everybody was putting our Ls in Read 180, thinking that was the salvation. That was not developed for English learners by design. So I ask you all as leaders to look at the resources that you use, that by design, the resources you're using are in fact addressing our emergent bilinguals. That's a gap. And the third gap I want to talk about has to do with the mindset, the rigor that's not there. The minute they don't speak English, the rigor goes down. What do you hear? Oh, they don't have high levels of proficiency. I have to lower it a little bit. So those are the 3 pieces that I call the real gaps that lead to the achievement gap. And I hope that we can think about those things. We've made a lot of gains. We've moved forward a lot. And I've been in this business for 100 years, okay? I've seen it move a lot. We're not there yet, and there's always room for improvement, but I'm very proud of us because we're there. We're finally there. So I'd like to contextualize our talk on those points. Thank you.
Would others like to speak on?
Can you hear me? Okay. So I am speaking from the perspective, a national perspective, just like Dr. Izquierdo, but more particularly with southern New Mexico and specifically Las Cruces, the Las Cruces area. There is no doubt that of the benefits of becoming bilingual and bilingual. There's no doubt. The research is there. It's been there for decades. We can rehash it as much as we want to, but it's indisputed what the benefits are. To me, what is missing in terms of making sure bilingual education and biliteracy becomes a priority in our schools is the political will and the willingness to have our leadership support that with resources in terms of professional development, materials, teacher preparation. And I don't see that happening yet. And I do also believe it is due to the social status of languages other than English in our nation, and even surprisingly in this area, how English is thought of, as Donaldo Macedo said, as the only viable language of the United States, which we know it is not. It never has been, and it is still not. And we need to make sure and acknowledge that the Spanish language or the Chinese language is just as valuable and viable as English, and it's actually necessary to develop our nation. So I do wholeheartedly agree with the mindset and the political will of our leaders to make sure it happens. There's no question that bilingualism and biliteracy is beneficial, is necessary, and is going to be the key to the prosperity of our nation and our region.
Okay, so what I would like to add to that is, in the state of Texas, and I'm just going to make this more of a policy, from the policy perspective. There are nearly 5.5 million students in Texas. 1 in 5 are English learners. 90% of our English learners are Spanish speaking, meaning 1 million students. Prior to House Bill 3, the multiplier was 0.1, meaning you got your basic allotment times 0.1, which is ridiculously minuscule when it comes to the necessity of the resources that you must purchase. And I'm very strong advocate for pencil, paper, and the less that we do online and with digital, the better. But when we look at the cost, then we start to see why perhaps we go digital. But along the lines of our gaps, because I absolutely don't believe in achievement gaps, because that starts to point the finger at students being underachievers or teachers being less than professional, and that's absolutely a lie. In addition to the gaps that Dr. Izquierdo mentions, we also have the digital divide. So when we give our students the iPad or whatever digital device, flavor of the month, if they don't have access to Wi-Fi, how beneficial is that? And so the city of El Paso is the 16th, 19th largest in the nation, but we're also number 13 for most households that do not have access to the internet. Part of that is resource-based finances. Where I live in the county, broadband does not exist. That's part of the Socorro district. That's all of Fabens, Tornillo, Clint, Sinelli. Their broadband doesn't exist. So how beneficial are these digital devices when kids can't access the information? And if there's anybody who's ever written a paper on your phone, right? Because what's the first thing we hear? Well, kids all have phones. They have data on their phones. Do you read on your phone? No. And so the idea of asking students to do that, I think, is also asinine. But what House Bill 3 did was take the 0.1 multiplier and increase it by 0.05, meaning we now have a 0.15, right, 15 cents. But what we asked for was 0.3. The compromise that we made was to, and it's not like we went in there and we made it happily, but the way compromise works is you're going to take what we're going to give you, right? And then you say thank you. But we got the 0.15 multiplier for the students who want to learn Spanish as well. Because the mindset where we're still struggling, and I hope that changes soon, but it hasn't changed in my lifetime, is if you happen to speak Spanish and you're learning English, then you are sitting at the side of the table waiting for the crumbs to fall from the meal that's been served. But if you speak English and you're learning Spanish, then please let me put you on the center seat. Please take everything. Good for you, mijita. I'm so proud of you for wanting to learn a second language. But we don't look at students who are learning English like we're proud of them. We look at them with a deficit, and something's wrong with them, and that has not changed. And so the way that I approach this from a policy perspective is we have two realities, one that we see very clearly and one that we choose not to see. The largest and fastest growing demographic in the state of Texas and the nation is the Latino human being. Knowing that this person is also highly likely to be an English learner, 1 in 5 students in the state of Texas, they are also the largest push-out group. They are not dropouts. And so please understand the difference between a push-out and a dropout. Okay? Everybody knows what a dropout is, but a push-out is when you can't pass your English 1 and English 2 test, you aren't given the resources that you need. We're not giving the funding or the professional development that our teachers need to be able to help them bridge the digital divide, or purchase the resources necessary, or extend the school day because they need more time. They leave high school with all of the required credits, but not the high school diploma. So these two lanes are going to converge very quickly, and in a lot of our communities, I think El Paso being one of them, that is kind of like the star on the mountain, right? You have the largest and fastest growing demographic, also being the largest, least well-educated population. How do you sustain an economy or a healthy economy with these two things that exist simultaneously? You don't. And so from a policy perspective, we're still 25 years behind, if not more.
Others want to speak to that, or?
I think I can answer.
Go ahead.
So, based on what you're saying, I think you bring up a good point, because they brought up, coming from Mexico to the States, that I was just thinking that as I hear great people speak, yes, it's always been seen like that, the fact that was proficient in Spanish, but then I'm here learning English, again, pushed aside, right? Instead of embracing the fact that, yes, I'm fully, fluent in Spanish, and I'm here to learn a second language, and being treated equally. I think the gap has been since, I was in first grade to now. So in regards to policies, yes, it's good to have policies, but embracing those policies. So I think that's where, this is going to make it work, because I think it's important not only to implement, but to follow through, to be able to make it happen. So that's it.
Georgina, and you all bring in some good points, some important and powerful points, actually, considering the role of policy. You all are all products of bilingual, biliterate experiences and schooling experiences, right? But are we at a point, so I'm looking at the questions here, I'm listening to what you're saying, and it sounds like we're at a point where we know the benefits of bilingualism and biliteracy. There's decades of research there to show that, to demonstrate that. But what exists now, especially in this time that we're living in right now, Mr. Velasquez mentioned earlier the parent denials. Should we speak more to them and be more active about that reality of parent denials, the current reality where bilingualism is seen as a detriment, and for many students and parents and communities, is it because, can we speak to actually the fear that many of them are living in because of the current climate that we live in? And we see evidence of that all around the country, where Mexican American adults are speaking in a rural community at a gas station in Montana, and they're targeted by ICE and questioned. Could that be one of the points that we need to look at more closely in terms of the fear that many are living in when it comes to the benefits of bilingualism, the beauty of biliteracy, and what it does and how it benefits all? We know it benefits many, but those who are the most marginalized is the vast majority of the population that are emerging bilinguals, but they live in fear, and I think they fear being the biliterate, bilingual individuals and community that they desire to be. Can we speak to that?
So I am originally from California. I was an educator in Los Angeles County for many years. And, I think everyone's aware of Proposition 227 that made bilingual education prohibited in the public schools. And the only way you could get a bilingual education was to attend a charter school or a private school. And there were long waiting lists of parents wanting their kids to get in those programs. So they were like these elite kind of programs that were not readily available to most people, who, especially our Latino populations, who needed them the most. So when I moved to New Mexico, I was like, oh my gosh, it's actually in the law that every school has to have a bilingual program. I can't believe it. And so I was so excited when I moved here. But then when I realized the level that those programs were funded, the lack of knowledge of both teachers and leaders about the benefits of bilingualism and about how to go about effectively implementing them and supporting them, I was really disappointed. And I feel like we have so much potential to move that forward. And I believe that Gadsden Independent School District is headed in the right direction with a lot of their policies and initiatives. And I think that we need to go in that way. Anyway, all this to say is, when I became the director of bilingual education in Las Cruces Public Schools, I also noticed the large number of parents who were withdrawing their children from bilingual programs. These were Latino parents, these were Mexican American immigrant parents who did not want their children in the programs. And so after seeing this pattern, we decided to do some research. So we did some exit interviews with the parents, and we required them to come to our district office, and we asked them, why is it that you want to remove your child? And the number one reason why parents did not want their children in the programs was because of the fear that they would fall behind by not learning English. The belief that, well, I can teach my child Spanish at home, but so the misconception that speaking Spanish is the same as being biliterate in Spanish and having it be part of a viable community, I think that misconception is definitely there with parents. The other issue that we encountered was historical trauma of multi-generational families in Doña Ana County. And what we found out was that the parents, or the parents of the parents we interviewed, were punished for speaking Spanish in schools. They were paddled. One woman who is my age, who was the daughter of farm workers who worked for Solomon Farms for the pecans, said that she was tied to a tree for speaking Spanish when she was not supposed to. Another person that I interviewed said that she was made to stand on a chair in the middle of the playground for speaking Spanish in school. And this is someone who is my age, in their 50s, okay? So knowing that intergenerational trauma, that historic trauma of being punished for speaking Spanish has a major effect on our parents. And then added to that, the climate of xenophobia and in our nation right now, and the wanting to build borders among communities, we have evidence that that is a factor in turning away from participation in bilingual programs. Yet, as Georgina did mention, however, for those who are privileged, those who are wealthy, and those who understand the benefits of bilingualism, they're seen as, oh, wow, it's almost like a status to be bilingual. Yet for our English learners, especially those who are from our Latino community, it's seen as a deficit, something to get rid of. And yes, and that needs to change, and that is definitely one of the reasons why it's difficult to move forward.
I appreciate what you have just said, because as I started, I talked about mind shifts. That's the hardest thing to implement. And if we don't pay attention to that, we're going to continue doing the same thing. So everybody's here, we don't have to, we're preaching to the choir here, right? Because all of you know all of these issues. And the good thing that's happened is that we've moved, many districts have moved into dual language education. That's the third phase of Reese's orientation of language. The first one being problematic, the next one being compliance. And now in dual language education, we look at both languages as resources for one another. So our ELAR and our SLAR build for one another. And when we talk about dual language, it's equity. We're talking about equity, not just learning to read in English and Spanish. We're talking about equity. But one of the biggest pieces that I see that is missing is exactly that, is work with our parents. Our parents need to understand what I see happening in many districts is as children move up to third grade, your privileged group and your underprivileged start to pull their kids out of the language, because now the content gets serious, they say. Well, then they really don't understand what dual language is, and so it starts in pre-K and kinder. Your teachers, your parents, they need to be really, really knowledgeable and articulate in the benefits of dual language education. And it's not just speaking two languages, but biliteracy across across the continuum, across the content area, and the social cultural competence that comes through all of that. You know, I've been doing dual for 100 years, all right? And I know that we look at test scores, and we look at the hueritos and do roots and say, hola, me llamo es, and we get all excited, you know, we look at all that. But one of the areas that is not looked at, and to me it's probably the most important piece of dual language education, is that social cultural competence that the children develop and leave school with. That is huge. They look at the world differently, they look at diversity differently, they think about equity, and we're leaders, we're in schools. Where are we in moving this agenda forward? Where are we in districts right now, moving the agenda of equity forward? Are we gonna transition to emergent bilinguals? That says a lot. We need a lot of parent sessions, a lot of meeting with parents. You're right, we're number one, Jose, you said that, for denials. That's nothing to be proud of, right? We got work to do, and we are in a position here, in a very rich position in this area in our borderlands, right? Where we have to excuse. We have maybe not the largest number, but the concentration, as you said, and we've been doing it for a longer time and in larger concentration. So I would like us all to really try and engage in more advocacy with parents and community members and really showing them what dual language is, because they're the ones that are gonna fight for this program, right? You as a teacher, as an administrator, whatever, you can take it so far, but the community and the parents are the ones that are gonna make the difference.
And then I think you mentioned the competence, the social culture competence, the linguistic competence, the biliterate competence. We see missing in a lot of our students. But when we've been to NABE, when we have conferences where the bilingual and biliterate students are there and they present and they speak, we see that competence because they've arrived at that point where they are a truly balanced bilingual and biliterate student, and we see that, and we see that when they enter the university and when they enter the workforce. We see that competence, and I always go back to what Diana Natalicio said at one point too at a forum where she wants all of our students at UTEP to graduate with competence and confidence, and I think that when our students graduate. Having come from the experience of building on their linguistic resources, their cultural resources, building on that, not being seen as a deficit, and they go through good programs and they graduate bilingual and biliterate. So they are, we've seen them, they graduate competent and confident in themselves. They're able to demonstrate that in many ways, and I think they can, and those to you in the private sector and the other sectors, if you want to speak to that too, where have you seen that? I mean, maybe you've experienced it yourself, but can you speak to where you've seen that too, that competence and confidence from bilingual and biliterate individuals who display that around you?
And like you mentioned earlier, sir, I mean, it all comes down to the parental push. In my family, especially my mom, is really advocate of us learning English well and Spanish, because my dad owned a construction company and we've always been in the construction business, and a lot of their bosses were trying to push my mother and my father to make us learn English only, because we were going to fall behind and things of that nature. But as you see, obviously, this thing worked. I have two sisters that are the same way bilingual. One's an accountant and the other one's a linguistics translator from here. So I mean, these things work. We see it every day. I mean, and like you said, unfortunately, with the political climate that's going on, we're falling backwards at thinking that by knowing Spanish, we put a target on our backs. But it shouldn't be that way. It's the other way around. I mean, I have personally gotten job offers to go out of the state and other places just because they speak Spanish, because like you said, the way you can only say hola me llamo, and can't continue to take a technical conversation and get what the client or whatever the case we're working, from a set of drawings or a paper statement to actually buildings and things of that nature. So I mean, like you mentioned, I mean, these programs are helpful, not just in the text. I mean, yeah, as all of you know, Alicia Corona actually made you to be trilingual. So it's not just staying at two, not just Spanish and English. I was fortunate enough to do a student exchange in Germany, and I was in 5th or 6th grade. My sisters went to school alone as well. And I mean, you get to experience how impacted you become and how well-rounded of an individual you become and how valuable you become for knowing 1, 2, or 3 languages. I mean, I wouldn't be able to tell you here that without the push from our parents, we probably wouldn't be here, or our mindset would be totally different. I mean, it does make you more empathetic to the current situations, knowing that not everybody has the same opportunities as us. To be honest, you know, my parents were rich, but we took these opportunities and made the best out of it. I mean, I know there's not a lot of people that my age can say or read whatever the bio have done, and probably won't do it in their lifetimes. So I mean, now it's my job to push my children to surpass me and their mom in education and everything pretty much, and become well-rounded parts of the community that can keep on preaching these programs until hopefully in another 100 years, right, they'll have a couple of these conferences and they can speak of what this has started and has evolved into a program that everybody can see the benefit from.
And hopefully we don't have to wait another 100 years, guys. I mean, it's so interesting to hear him talk about the benefits of this, but finding out after you're out of school. So schools are the ones that really need to get on board with mind shifts, right? Because we're not valuing that till after we're out and we figure out, oh yeah, that was good, look where I am. Kids need to know this now as they're in there, and so do parents. Right?
And also to add to that, it shouldn't be the parents having to fight for this in the educational system. It should be the schools themselves, the school systems, the leadership of the school systems to make sure it is available and thriving and have the resources they need. Because when we talk to parents, another factor for taking their children out of dual language programs is teachers and principals pushing those students out, those parents. Why? Because they were students with special needs, and there's a belief that special needs services trump bilingual services or English learner services. In addition, when the students got to the secondary level in high school, due to poor scheduling at the high school level, those classes that students needed to maintain and develop their language skills conflicted with AP courses or honors courses or required courses they needed to graduate. How is that possible that a schedule would prevent students from becoming bilingual and participating in those programs? So it is, I mean, the parents do have to advocate because it's the community that's going to push all of us. But the schools need to take the bull by the horns and make it happen.
Along that sentiment, and I don't mean to sound, when I start sounding like I disagree with you, say it, okay? Because that's not my intention. But I don't want the message to be, schools, you're not doing enough.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Because my district is all of the frontera. Do you know how many detention centers we have? Do you know how many brown kids that look just like many of us in here and the students that we all work with? And if you didn't know that they were born on a different piece of dirt, you wouldn't know that they weren't born in the United States. When we have tweets from leaders, and I'm struggling for nice words, talking about sending SWAT into sanctuary cities, I don't know what kind of training teachers need to be able to combat that kind of fear. And I don't know if any kind of training to be able to combat that fear exists. But when we had the child detention center in Tornillo, and if there's anybody in here who doesn't know, I live down the street from that detention center. Do you know how many children didn't go to school while it was there because their parents were afraid that they would get picked up, walking to school, and put on the other side of that fence? How many children who are American citizens are not going back and forth across the border and going to school like is their right to do because of immigration policies that now exist, or the lack of policy, but immigration reality. And so when we talk to parents and they have a tangible fear, whether it's because they remember being picked up by their ears and their face splitting, or being paddled in front of the class with the board that has the holes to vent the air through, or because the detention centers are all around our communities and nobody wants to be separated from, it's bad to separate children from parents, but it's okay to separate parents from children. How does that work? It's okay to lock up the adults who are non-violent, non-criminal, but it's not, but where do the kids go? And then they go into some random system and then they're lost and their parents are lost. That is a tangible fear. And so it's not fair to say to schools, you have to do more, teachers, you have to do more. What can they do if they don't have people in a position to write better policies and to communicate that just because we have crazy tweeting doesn't mean that that's right. We have to remind people that lawful and right are not the same. Slavery was legal. Hiding Jews was illegal. Lynching was legal. No spics at this water fountain was legal. Parents feel like that today. We have concentration camps again. We have punishment again. We live with tangible fear. What can schools and communities do until we have policy that says, no, we are not doing this again?
So let me clarify, when I say schools or school leaders, I also mean school boards, I also mean our elected officials who allocate funding and develop policy for our schools. Because you're right, a principal's hands are tied, they can only do so much. But to me, if a school leader or a district leader or a board member of a community does not stand up for those things and stand up against those things, you are complicit in perpetuating that. So when I say school leaders, schools need to stand up and need to take a stand, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about, because our parents are afraid. How are they going to go down to a school board meeting and voice their opinion when they live in fear? So we have to empower them and be a voice for them. So you are absolutely right. Schools in themselves as entities, districts, our superintendents are not the ones to blame, but yet we do still have to take that advocacy stance and push back.
And they're micro-societies. Schools are micro-societies, and policy is great, I agree. You need to have policy or you're an invisible population. But the key in developing policy is making sure that it's implemented. That's where we need to look at how it's implemented and that it's being implemented equitably. And equity, that we started with biliteracy and dual and all this, we've moved forward a lot. But equity must manifest itself throughout the curriculum. Not just during ESL time, not just during Spanish language arts time, not just those classes. It's got to be throughout the entire curriculum. I see, and I work all over the country, and I see students that are sent to special classes so that they can learn only science through a sheltered approach and through some materials and training that teachers are getting. Yet the school is like 80% Latino. I'm talking Arkansas, by the way, all right? Arkansas has all our Mexican-American people over there because of the jobs that are over there, okay? The headquarters for Walmart is there, all right? So the kids are struggling. The kids are struggling, all right? So it's not just a course. I did a study when we prepared for the Texas Financial Commission report that we had to do. And it was 1,700,000 and something else English learners, right? Emerging bilinguals in Texas. And then we looked at the different programs that you have here in the chart that you gave us, Jose, right? And we saw that it was dual, it was ESL, and it was what was the other one? Transitional. And we saw that the students, Texas-wide, I looked at all the data, created the data, and showed it to the Texas Commission, showed that your dual language students, regardless of the model, outperformed all those models, right? And it showed that the ESL, and probably traditional ESL, was the least effective. So what I talked about was that all the money that they put into bilingual education, half of it is going to the least effective model.
Yeah.
So then the proposal that Georgina brought up was, why are you wasting your money in the least effective model when we should be putting it into and incentivizing districts that are moving towards, and here we're going, a true dual language program, meaning true that we look at it beyond just reading and writing in two languages, but social cultural competence, equity. And equity, and this is why I asked you as leaders in the field of dual language, look at the equity in the curriculum, make sure that the dual, direction and goal is equity throughout the curriculum, not just a section. And how much more are the districts getting now because of that change?
Depending on participation, it's anywhere between 15 and 50 million annually.
So districts are moving quickly.
You've got to move
try
out
to
of
get
ESL.
them.
But you can't, we want to move quickly, but we also don't want to move quickly,
No.
right? Because you can't
You're right.
train everybody all at one time, right? You've got to do what, K through 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, then 9, 12. But I think we start to tend to see fewer pullouts after third grade when we have true dual language after third grade, right? And it's not a pull, it's science in English and Spanish. It's math in English and Spanish. And the idea that we have AP in only English, right? And dual credit only in English. And even at the university, your papers are only acceptable in English, right? And so
Not in our department.
not in every university, right? But we see that, right? You're a doctor in your country, you drive for Lyft here, right? And so when we truly accept education, regardless of language and nationality and culture, as equal, then we can have a real conversation about equity, and we still are not there.
And it's real important how we present this, because this is what Georgina did, right? In terms of putting the perspective that the commission needed. The commission did not approve all this for dual language because they love the goals of dual language, right? No, they did it because what we presented was that you pay now or you pay later.
Yeah.
Dropouts, social services, detention centers, jails. That's what drove it. So that's really important that as we work with our parents and our different audiences that we work with in the community, that we contextualize it in the perspective that is meaningful to them. So we sell it that way, whether it's to the business, right, also. And you all are great examples of that. And I saw your book before you graduated. I loved it. It was the art teacher that was there. Yes, I remember that. So you see the products here.
Yes, first, thank you for these valuable resources that we're getting. My name is Cherie Hallberg. I'm a health and education advocate. And what I would like to know is if you can embellish more, or not embellish, but if you can explain more, clarify. Special needs populations. We know here in Texas that English, Spanish, Hmong, Korean, Vietnamese, these are the top languages. We know that in California and some parts of the East and West Coast that we have over 118 dialects of different types of Asian languages. So of course here on the border we want to think that it is just strictly English and Spanish, but we all know better. So and don't get me wrong, soy una mexicana americana, okay? First generation Mexican Latina here in the United States educated. My question is, number one, are we applying all of these dual language implementations with our special needs populations in Braille, in our speech to text boards, in every type of communication that we have for our special needs populations? And also, how are we addressing all of our other languages, Farsi, Hmong, Vietnamese, Korean, Chinese, etc.?
And that's like another form that we need, right?
Well, there are 120 languages spoken in our 1,200 school districts in Texas. But the short and nasty answer, no.
That's right.
No, we don't. We're nowhere near that because the priority, the money will go to the priority, kind of like in a hospital triage situation. That's where the money's gonna go. And so because the bulk of the students, 90% of the 1 million English learners are Spanish speaking, the bulk of the money is gonna go there. But when I say bulk of the money, please don't believe that it's a lot. It's 15 cents. But can you buy anything with 15 cents today? It's not money that you can really take for all of your English learners or your dual language students and train all of your teachers and buy all of the resources and et cetera. And then when you start to look at our rural schools, and just like in our urban settings, they are spending $75,000 to train their teachers, right? So you go into wherever you get your job, you get your contract, and you get all of this training, and at the end of 2 years, 3 years, you go down the street to a large urban area where you can make more money, right? And good for you for taking advantage of opportunities. But then our smaller schools are back at zero, and they're not going to get more than 15 cents. And so if we want to talk seriously about positive impact in the community, we have to follow that with money. And part of the reason that we don't have enough money to put into education is because it comes out of the general fund, and we have to build the wall, and we have to have border security because it all comes from the same pocket. And that's where the bulk of the money is going.
But remember also, I wanted to speak to that, and we'll
I
get
said
to...
that sarcastically, but in case you didn't catch that.
And we'll come to questions, we're gonna come to more questions after the break, right? So, is that, okay, so, but we wanna open it up right now, or wanna wait till? Okay, but I guess if we maybe wanna go with the rhythm and stuff we can, but to that question though, actually, and then, and to some previous points, and we can look at the short-term and long-term consequences as it relates to business as well. Those, a lot of those, many, if not most of those languages that were just mentioned, because of current policy, immigration policy in particular, a lot of those languages are demonized.
Yes.
And so you have enrollments in universities from international students dropping.
Yes.
Because those languages and the people that those languages represent are demonized, or they're being scrutinized more today. And so no one wants to come because they're afraid. No one comes to our universities. No one wants to go outside and speak the languages that represent their home and their cultures and communities. So there's the demonization of all those languages there that has great repercussions and consequences on families, on communities, on law enforcement and the cooperation there, and then ultimately in business. So if we have that missing, the business people on the panel too, if you want to speak to this, what can you talk to us about what you see now, or can you foresee in the future the lack of biliterate people affected the workforce that you see maybe the consequence of current policy that has demonized language and multilingualism, bilingualism, biliteracy?
Yeah, so it's a big issue overall, big fear overall, and not only impacting the education business, but also the industry, the work industry. A lot of people that we have, where I've worked, come from Juarez across every day. With all this going on in the world that we live in, they're affected in one way or another. There's people that are trying to bring their families to the States so they won't have to be crossing on a daily basis, right? But again, the fear of what if, you know what I mean? Bring them, and it takes a long time. They're gonna separate us and all that stuff. So yes, that definitely impacts us. Closing the bridges, we have people constantly being impacted by that. The lines of the bridges now. So it impacts them, it impacts us, it impacts everybody. So yeah, it is a big issue as far as all around, just in the education business.
On the business end, and I'm talking since I have most of my background in construction, I started to see how it gets harder to get bilingual and biliterate, in my sense, project managers, engineers, things of this nature, because like you mentioned, there's a lot of great engineers and scientists and professionals that come from the Middle East. Due to how their situation and culture is viewed here, we stop seeing it influxed into our workforce. So now we're trying to, where using the word we're in foster, I mean, most of our population or workforce knew Spanish, but higher management and upper levels, all English. That one of us in the lower levels would have to accompany them to certain meetings because we did a lot of business with Mexican nationals, people that preferred to be spoken to in Spanish, and you had our vice president that couldn't understand other than hola. So it's become, they start to see the trend, and it's becoming harder to get well-rounded professionals that can, on their own, do what needs to get done without having the assistance of a translator. You know, it's not the same thing being able to translate just for conversation purposes when it's actually understand technical specifications, data, and things of that nature, that when you return a project or turn in a project, and you're like, that's not what I wanted. That's what I understood from the translation notes, because you didn't understand what I wanted. You heard what I said, but didn't grasp the concept of what I needed you to do. And those things pose challenges, because at the end of the day, all this is money, and money driven. In a business, if you lose money, somebody's losing a job. And to my experience and to my favor, this program, which I can't stress enough, helped me out to be where I'm at, because now I do the job of three people and get a desired outcome. Whereas if I didn't know, obviously not Spanish, if I didn't know English well, I would need somebody else to go ahead and assist me. And you know that in the translation we use a lot of everything. Especially in our construction projects, a lot of our identity goes into these projects, and we design and things like this. And you have people proofread and redo your work, and I mean, you lose that confidence, like you mentioned earlier, and then you just start becoming a cookie cutter kind of person. And I mean, I don't think nobody likes that. So you know, it's getting tougher out there. So I mean, good thing with these kinds of sessions and this information out there, people are going to start to notice that it is an effort to be involved in and an effort to push on. So I mean, it's going to benefit society, economy, and everybody else at the end.
The state of Texas imports upwards of 80,000 engineers annually. We don't produce them in our schools. We don't. And it's not because we don't have the population, we do. Texas is one of the only states in the nation that our K-12 public school enrollment increases. And we do not produce engineers.
So that's an area of partnership and work that needs to be focused on with a certain committee, whatever, that could very easily be done, you know, and involving you all. I want to go back to the lady's comment. She's not here anymore, but I want to take advantage of this because this is real important. When we talk about special ed and dual, we immediately say, oh no, special ed, thinking that special ed is just one thing. And it involves many, many levels of disabilities, we know that. The problem is, and this is where we're going to need your advocacy, okay? Pero ya no tienen pelos en la boca, como decimos en and that is that,
y'all didn't catch on.
and that is, we have a bilingual certification,
Yes.
and a special ed certification
Right.
at the state level.
Right.
We tried to advocate many years ago to create a bilingual special ed certification, because when we don't have it, what trickles down to the districts, right, is special ed and bilingual. That's really hard.
Well, Dr. Cavazos took over SBEC today, so we have a direct line to get that done now.
Well, then we need to advocate for that.
Yes.
And we need to grow our own, oh my gosh, this is the perfect place, our borderplex, to grow our own specialist in bilingual special education.
Where's the bilingual for dyslexia?
That too.
Where's the diagnostic for dyslexia? Where are the resources and tools for Spanish speakers who have dyslexia? There's zero.
Because we don't
There's
have a policy
nothing.
or a certification, so we gotta go for
Yeah,
both.
it's the same thing in New Mexico as well, and so, it's, you know, it's hard to find people that are dually qualified or certified to provide those services. But also speech and language pathology, there's such a shortage. I know in Doña Ana County, where some of our Spanish dominant students who have special needs are not getting the services that they deserve, and that is their right to receive. It can also be in the form of physical therapy or occupational therapy as well. So diagnostics is very, very important. We have, I know the second most frequent language spoken other than Spanish is Arabic in Las Cruces. And we have students that are waiting to be tested, but there's nobody to test them. And so we go around and around and around trying to find someone to finally test a child who needs special services. And in the meantime, they're not getting them.
And we don't have anybody because we don't have certifications. And so it just continues to be, so we really need to move in that direction. The other thing that was brought up was, you have so many other language groups represented. How do we address them in dual? That shouldn't be an excuse for not doing dual, number one, right? But number two, where we do have other languages, we need to get really good at children instruction across the curriculum, not just in ESL time,
Right.
not just in English time.
Not pull-ups.
Not pull-up, but across the curriculum. So keep those things in mind, because as I go many places, I'm hit with comments like that say, well, we have other languages and we want to be equitable. You know, if we can't have it for everybody, we want to implement it for Spanish. Hello, you know, it doesn't make sense. So be ready with that argument.
Exactly.
But 90% of your students are
Yes.
that.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
that's not even reality. That's just, I don't want to do it. Like, let's not
That's an
pretend.
excuse,
Okay,
yeah.
well, we're not because, no. You're not because you don't want to. Just say what it is. You don't want to do it.
If we look at it from an equity perspective, in our region, the majority of our population is Mexican American, Latino. So it's, to me, as an Asian American, to me it makes sense to have dual language in Spanish and English throughout the region.
Right.
It's wonderful, like I believe at Alicia Chapon, there is also Mandarin being introduced into the, Russian and German, so that is wonderful. But if we look at it from an equity perspective of who are the majority of the people that live in this region, whose land is this? You know, whose land are we all occupying? That is an equity issue. And so Spanish, biliteracy in Spanish and English is imperative. So it'd be wonderful to have, dual language programs in all kinds of languages.
Right.
But we need to look at it as an equity perspective first, and making sure we close those opportunity gaps in education and in life. And then, and we just need to be real about the inequities in terms of many of our East Asian population, our communities versus our Latino communities. And we have to be real about that equity piece.
Well, and we have many children that are in our dual language programs that aren't Spanish speakers. They're other languages, which is great. But we also have a law in Texas that says if you have 20 students of the same language group in a district, then you have to provide bilingual service. And nobody's done anything with that. But again, it goes to the parents. Do parents know that? Do parents want that? And is that being done? Your largest group, your next group, was Arabic, but your fastest growing group is still Vietnamese.
Yes.
Okay, it's still Vietnamese.
The state of Texas does more business with Mexico than all other 49 states combined. You know this very well. You know this very well. So not only are we shortchanging our students in the classrooms academically, because I think everybody in the room probably has read the numerous studies that show how much more academically advanced our students who are bilingual are in all content areas. But what we're shortchanging them is the economic advantage that they have. And when we're talking about a very large state like Texas, when the money comes to the table and the people who they're trying to work with don't speak your language, the translation doesn't happen, the cookie cutter is the result, where does the money go?
Or deeper south. It's easy as that.
Yeah,
So not only are we losing the education, but we're losing the economic impact as well.
Right. So to your point, not only business with Texas, but especially here in the borderland, a lot of the businesses here, because we're, majority bilingual, yes, a lot of the business nationwide around the world are stationed here, and then we produce, export. An example, call center where I'm at, 80% of Spanish calls are taken here in El Paso. There's another call center where 90% of their calls come to El Paso and then are distributed nationwide. So that gives you an idea, and this is not only worldwide, this is nationwide. Again, because of the diversity that are, that we are as a nation, El Paso is very strong, and a lot of companies depend on a diverse culture like ours to do business. And again, people are lacking the, bilingual, only know the Spanglish part of it. So yes, it's going to be difficult not only to communicate here in El Paso, but across the world. So.
God, we need to hear more about that. The whole community needs to hear more about
yes,
it.
and it's important to understand, that having a bilingual culture in the business, it allows to expand. Because again, every business, we don't only service in the United States. Now we have very bicultural target markets. You know what I mean? Where I'm at currently, we're very diverse. Our CEO is from Sweden. Our marketing director is from Italy. You know what I mean? And we embrace that. We encourage that. The call center where I'm at, there's 432 employees. All of them are bilingual. And again, 80% of our calls that we receive are Spanish speaking. See what I'm saying? So the service we provide, not only because we can communicate, but we can relate to our customers. That's why we're the leaders of what we do. And I think that's very important. And it starts here.
No pressure.
So that goes to the question then. How do we convince? Going back to one of our original questions or points about parent denials.
So
how do we convince parents, for example,
right.
Business, higher ed,
right.
of the benefits of that long-term business?
From a personal perspective, I was born and raised in Juarez, so I think the logic for my parents to come to the United States was for us to better ourselves. Okay, so that's the initial goal. You're going to go in there, you're going to learn the language, you're going to succeed. Okay, so it's not that they're in denial; it's that they're educated. They don't know how it works. Okay, so in Mexico, it's a totally different system. In Mexico, you learn Spanish, and yes, a lot of people know English, right? But when you come to the States, the culture is different. The fear, a lot of factors play into the education system. So I think it's very important, and it all starts here, educating our parents. The importance of being biliterate, the importance of being bilingual, and how it's not only going to help them individually, but when they hit the workforce, so that they don't realize, oh, after I graduated, I didn't realize how important it was for me to be bilingual. We have people that apply, they put on the resume, I'm bilingual. Where I'm at, part of the interview is in Spanish. You know what I mean? So you start asking questions in Spanish, and they're like,
I'm not that bilingual.
And they start saying, ¿me la puedo repetir para atrás? Like, you know what I mean? So that type of thing, which we understand, we know what that means, right? But when you start dealing with customers nationwide or people into Mexico, just not going to understand. So it's going to create a disconnect with the business and our clients, and it gets like, these guys don't really know what they're doing and what they're saying. So it's a big impact. So to your question, I think it's important as educators, as leaders, to not only focus on their students, but I think the parents, are very, 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 very important to let them know the benefits of this, because again, it's going to benefit individually, and again, as they go into the workforce.
I think we also need to develop stronger collaborations between workforce and community development and our educational systems, because if we develop career pathways in our public schools for students right out of high school to enter the workforce, and if we value as schools a biliterate seal, a certification that you are biliterate in 2 languages, I think that goes a long way in terms of that student being able to enter the workforce right away and being very sought after. So I know in New Mexico, we just a couple of years ago, the legislature approved a bilingual biliteracy seal for our high school students. And there's still a lot of misconception about it, thinking that, oh, to get the seal, all I have to do is be able to say hello in a language.
Me llamo this.
Yes, but it is actually a demonstration of those biliteracy skills at a very rigorous level. And so I think if we can develop sort of that pathway in terms of teaching parents, but teaching the community that that biliteracy is a valued skill, and then we can start that work in our public schools to make sure we have a very robust workforce. So there are movements also. I visited a school in Cobb County, Georgia, where they have a career pathway high school set up in academies, and one of the pathways is for students to become actual certified translators. And they actually start working while they're still in high school as certified translators, and that is an actual program in those schools. So think about, you know, that strong connection between our community and workforce development and our schools, and I think we need to do a better job of that.
We have a little challenge here, is that many of us were not fortunate enough to get educated in Spanish, right? It was done to us, it was removed for us, and so we learned our Spanish, we're bilingual. But biliteracy is something we have to work towards. And many of our teachers, I did a survey across districts, and the #1 request from teachers was more training in Spanish, all right? So why is it that we learn about Spanish in English? Why is it that we're reading books in English about Spanish? You know, why are we asking teachers to pass that BLT, whatever test it is, but then we're not supporting them, right, with professional development? I have some beauties this semester in my class. Their Spanish is to die for, but I also have some students that need that extra support. So a lot of the professional development that we offer in the districts that we have here needs to maybe offer some sessions ongoing in Spanish for our teachers, because they feel bad. They feel embarrassed, you know, because they grew up with pochos, pochismos, with Spanglish, and now we're calling it translanguaging, guys, get ready. Yeah. Right? Translanguaging is good, right? But people are having struggles with it because it's kind of like the good version of Spanglish. Spanglish is okay if you and I can do it, but when it's a place like the business, and when they're making calls and they're saying patras and frente or whatever it is, I mean, you know, we've got to work on that. We got to work on that. But I said, listening to you, God, we need to be making presentations at schools and to parents.
So it's also important to realize, especially here in the borderland, back when I was younger, when we first migrated here, El Paso used to be manufacturing industry. You know, the Levi, you know, all that is gone, right? Now it's become a service industry. You know, we have like 10 call centers. And again, all these call centers provide service, you know, not in El Paso, it's external. You know what I mean? And again, that's where the bilingual. Before we didn't see it as important because again, we were all from El Paso and we all worked at a manufacturing facility, and we can communicate. And we let our leaders do the communication for us, right? But now it's different. Now our leaders don't communicate. It's us. It's the employees. It's the frontline people that are doing the business for us. And that's when we try to find the best qualified, a bilingual, a biliterate, you know, how well you can communicate, how well you can relate to our customers to provide the service we want you to provide, to be the leaders of what we do. And that's difficult. That's a challenge.
It's awesome to hear. That's great.
So why don't can we speak more to the leadership part of the biliteracy programs, and then maybe go into maybe college readiness and leadership being a part of that college readiness. What can we do to strengthen the potential in our students in terms of leadership in our K-12 system, and the role that dual language education, biliteracy play in developing literacy skills, leadership skills?
I will speak to the teacher preparation component part, because we are responsible. We should be working more towards developing that academic language. We have issues too, guys, just like districts do, okay? And as people come and go, things get deleted, moved, watered down, whatever, but we have reinstituted the push for more courses offered in Spanish because we see that we need that population out there. But we're not the only department that does it in teacher preparation. I know that Department of Languages and Linguistics also does it with translation. So it's like we need a, here we go, another committee, here we go, right? Another committee that can really look at that and start creating a real pipeline to do that in terms of leadership. We're offering the courses completely in Spanish. And let me tell you, students are struggling with that. Students are struggling with the courses in Spanish. And the reason is because it was done to them. It was removed. So now they're trying to recapture it. And I hate that they feel bad about it. It's not their fault, right? But that was our systems that did that. So now we need to change that and make them feel more confident and hear from people like you. We need you to come talk about your businesses because that's a motivator. That's a job. That's a real need for that. That's where you see the connection all the way down. If we don't have that connection, well established, and it's just a foreign language. And biliteracy is not a foreign language, right? Biliteracy is two that develop together. And one thing we've learned in all these years, and now thanks to the ELAR and SLAR movement, is that when we teach biliteracy, languages are resources for one another, and we teach side by side, we plan side by side, and now that we're into the science of reading saga, we also need the Spanish side by side put in there.
Yeah, if you guys haven't had the science of reading shoved down your necks yet, it's coming.
We want it shoved down in Spanish too.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's only in English. And then of course, when you get it, please translate it. Or translanguage it or whatever. One of the things where in addition to doing this at the teacher prep and at our ISD leadership, the business model has to be in policy. While it's always nice to say, look at the benefits for our kids, and look at how wonderful, and look at the cultural competence, and I will make this political, because it's our democratic process. Democrats are very touchy-feely, their identity, blah, 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 right? And the language of money does not respond to that, right?
That's right.
But it's only semantics, because if you're gonna talk about the money component, and I'm gonna talk about the identity component, aren't we getting what we both want at the same time? We're just speaking two different versions of the same reality. But if the money component is absent from the conversation, if the economic component is absent from the conversation, you will not get the policy. You won't.
And a good motivator of giving the money is seeing results, right?
Yes.
So if we partner up and we sell this vision and the results are great, then yeah, do more, expand it. So that's what it was.
Get a little more than 15 cents.
There you go.
Speaking more to the funding issue in terms of New Mexico, I'm sure all of you have heard about the Yazzie Martinez versus State of New Mexico court ruling in which two families sued the State of New Mexico for not funding education at the proper levels, especially in terms of Native American students, English learners, and immigrant students, and our students with special needs. So in the ruling, the State of New Mexico is required to remedy that. And so we are going to see and have already started seeing an influx of more funding into our school districts. It's not enough. It's not enough money. There's never enough money. But I think we also have to be smart about where we place those resources as well. The current funding formula for the State of New Mexico is that funding for bilingual programs goes into the general fund for a district. So districts themselves decide how that money is used. It's not categorically tied to our bilingual programs. And so we've got a great school board and a great superintendent who prioritizes placing that money in our bilingual programs. That's wonderful. But you have a lot of districts that don't. They use it to pay for other things. And I understand that, autonomy of districts and everything, but I think we need to also look at that accountability issue if we are going to see the money go to the right places.
And that's the first argument that we get. That's the first pushback that we get when we ask for more money. Well, we are already giving you this. Where are you putting it? Where is it going?
This will be the last question before we go on break. We're going to go on break then at 10 o'clock. What do you consider the main critical features of effective policies, programs, and practices that support innovation and academic success for English learners and emerging bilinguals? And from your perspective, if you can provide that, critical features of effective policies, programs, and/or practices that support innovation and academic success for English learners and emerging bilinguals.
I think that the people that develop policy have got to be the stakeholders. I think parents need to be at the table, absolutely, as appropriate. Older students, right, high school or whatever, need to be at the table. Teachers have to be at the table, and with the right mindset in terms of it's not just a course, right, or a program. It's a way of educating the student throughout his journey in schooling. And I keep saying this, equity has to manifest itself throughout the curriculum. So that's really important. Policy is not easy to craft because it's got to be legally, right? People got to look at it to make sure that it's okay legally. But implementation is another piece. Monitoring it is another piece. Being held accountable regularly, not once a year, is to the different audiences that they need to speak to about that is important too. That's how I see what you rolled out.
In terms of the district level or school level implementation, I agree. I think that is key. I think we have to adhere to the guiding principles of dual language, which you helped to develop, which are wonderful. I think that we need to adhere to those best practices. We need to monitor them, and we need to provide professional development to our teachers. I also think that we need to be a little bit more creative about implementation. So for instance, in Las Cruces Public Schools, there's a strand of dual language within every elementary school. Well, what happens with a strand is that it's often marginalized and it's often misunderstood by the larger community, even perhaps misunderstood by the leadership and administration themselves. So I think we have to get a lot more creative about how we develop our dual language programs. And I know, for instance, Garcia Independent School District, they're developing like a feeder pattern where students who are in dual language programs in elementary school feed into a dual language middle school and then feed into a strand in the high school level. So that way, dual language experiences don't end at grade 5 or grade 6, which often happens in our schools because we don't have secondary programs. But if we can kind of consolidate and be more creative about developing that secondary pathway in middle schools and high schools. It may not be in every school, but at least we can pull the resources there. We can attract the best of the best to serve in that program, and we can bring our students to those programs. We have magnet programs, we have early college schools that we bus kids to and pay for their transportation. Why can't we do that for our students who are in dual language programs?
And we have districts here that are implementing it district-wide, which is great, because when you have a strand in a school that's dual and the rest are not, that's kind of, what can I say, contradictory. Because you're saying, how can we believe this for these kids? Equity and cultural, but for these, something else. So that's hard, and for a principal, you have to give credit to that principal that has to manage those two ideologies that are there and keep everybody informed and make it work. But when you say, well, if you do it district-wide, everybody's on board, not easy. All right? Because now you see, what does human resources have to do with dual? What is their role? What does assessment do now? What does evaluation look like in dual? What does a curriculum look like now? The curriculum departments, I'm talking about departments. What about professional development? Is a professional development providing ongoing professional development on dual year-round, right? What about everybody? So the problems become more challenging. They're doable, and my hat's off for those districts that are doing that because it's hard work. But you see you see the change happening little by little. The mindset is the biggest thing, guys. And so I ask you, please consider that as you're moving your districts into these programs, to think about equity and what it means across the curriculum. When we say monitor, I wanted to go back to the monitor once we develop policy. It's not a I got you monitor type thing. It's a monitor that says, this doesn't look like it's working. Let's look at this.
It's more like support for
Exactly.
efficacy
Exactly.
versus tracking and
Right.
consequences and punishment. The consequences and punishment model does not work. It doesn't work for children, it doesn't work for adults, it doesn't work for schools. And I think we're, being in El Paso, we're also ground zero for knowing how the consequences and punishments are completely antithetical to effective education.
You wanna hog up the time.
From your perspective, from a business perspective, anything in terms of innovation and
Probably has to be more flexible. I mean, we know our society and our environment, the public sector and business fields are changing. So those policies that I think if they're flexible enough to adapt, because, not everybody learns the same way. What might work for the school system might not work for El Paso, might not work for Neo. So if there's enough flexibility, and I think that would be a great to, like you said, if this is not working, well, at least have the second option.
Right.
Or make up the best of the first and the second to target these students that are having extra struggles. So I mean, not make it just black and white, but make it, leave some gray areas in order to be able to target everybody and to get the desired outcome. And also, like you mentioned earlier on how we can get our parents and everybody more involved or informed, educated for the business perspective. Throw it out there. Money's king. You show them the numbers, and people will follow. And like you said earlier, either you pay now or you pay later. And usually, when you pay later, you pay double because you do things twice, no work. And I talked on my background because of construction, and I rather do it a little bit higher price at the beginning for doing it right, and paying double or triple doing it 2 times. So I mean, and I think those models apply to a lot of things, especially in education, because we were the future way back, not that way back, not back. And obviously, these are the fruits of all that, all you guys work on our end, our family, on us to keep the interest, and like I said earlier, to provide a feeder pattern. I'm fortunate enough that Alicia Chacon, along with Ms. Lisa Eisner, took that effort to take from Alicia Chacon, then to the Valle, and take us as guinea pigs to see how it worked. And I got the opportunity to write that book, do a lot of other things. And it's not just me, there's a group of a lot of other classmates that were in the same level of success, if you will, thanks to all these opportunities. And then you see the other people that weren't fortunate enough or didn't want to at one point follow through. Not that they didn't do good, but I mean, they faced different challenges when, these opportunities were free. You didn't have to pay for it. You came out of high school with college courses. We have those seals on our diplomas, and we're certified by the Bilinguals in the state of Texas. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that, if you want to put it in straight terms, it's money. It produces money, you earn money, and it saves somebody money in the long run.
But it also makes money for your community.
It's like that, because at the end of the day, I don't have even here. And this, and along with other studies and professional titles, whatever you want to call them, eventually will make me move forward and allow more people with the same or better background, because that's what we expect from people to surpass us, can take these next steps and then be here to push for Bilingual, for policy endeavors, and make us ready. So maybe next time it's not just like there's now pushing that everybody has a third language or fourth language or whatever the case may be. So I mean, it does impact a lot, and I mean, I think we're in the right way. We're far off, but it works every time we work.
Then we're gonna need more partnerships with business people like you guys, because honestly, we lose our graduates from the university, they leave, because there are no jobs here. Even they're bilingual, Houston, Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, they all come here and take all our teachers, away, and construction, everything. So we really need that partnership with our community in terms of business and jobs and good pay, right?
And that, it goes, like you said, it goes down to money. I mean, if you would see right now, just drive anywhere. How far do you drive without seeing that construction? So, I mean, Texas, I work for Texas a while too. Texas has a plan that every 10 years they develop certain roads. Those that ran, by the time this set of the 10 years is done, the next one is ready to go. The city does the same thing. We do models of our streets and our buildings and all of those things. So the jobs are out. Unfortunate thing is, like you said, the money benefit is not appealing to those people that said, I just spent 4 years becoming an engineer to come out here and make $45,000. And over the course of 20 years, the city make 90 and retire at 65. I mean, I know different situations and I push you to certain decisions, but I mean, if you must stay back in school, you kind of want to learn. And unfortunately, if they call you from Houston or Austin or anywhere, and your starting salary at 75, and it's zero experience,
And they want you to
I'm
leave.
leaving.
Right.
And I'm leaving.
You're 18 years old and you can walk onto a job site and earn $80,000 as with a high school diploma because you're bilingual, but not in El Paso.
So, yeah, you have to go to Midland, you have to go to Odessa, to be in the middle of nowhere for 6 months.
It's not nowhere.
Farther out, you know? So, I mean, and that's what it comes down to. I mean, so that's why, and also the way we've seen it, a lot of people don't follow any more professional degrees. I have welders on the teams that make more money than I do.
Yeah.
They have a diploma. I wouldn't trade it because those, I saw my dad go through that stage. Those type of jobs are like a sport. The moment your body starts giving you, you're done. Half of these programs don't have pensions, they don't have 401ks, they don't have all that. If you want to last your kids at least, I mean, you think into all those things. I mean, it has to be an all-inclusive model that starts obviously with the schooling, the family, to educate all of us. You don't learn everything in school. You should come educate people that can basically get educated. You learn at home, you learn at school, and you get educated at home. And that's all very traditional Mexican model. So I mean, bringing it all into the play, into the table, provides better, well-rounded professionals, in my opinion. And that's where I was raised, that's where my sisters were raised, and I mean, we're not doing that now. So I mean, the moment you put all these issues and throw them out there as one, then I guess business leaders and things like that will start hearing these calls and maybe do their due diligence of pushing it forward until they can and then passing it to the next person, creating that mindset. Because if not, it's going to be dead in the water and never going to get out with the rent over there.
Well, we've been in this rut for about 30 years, 40 years. We're in it. And I think the frustration comes from we see the problem, we live the problem, we probably know the solution. I think we have plenty of research and data to demonstrate at least what the next steps should be, and we can't get there.
And maybe that can be the part of the discussion after the break. Then we're going to take a 15-minute break, and we come back, and that's a good place to begin. So everyone has 15 minutes to find all the solutions. Okay? We'll see you in 15 minutes. Thank you very much.
Great conversation, awesome dialogue. And I want to take just a quick minute to recognize a group of parents who who have come to join us this morning. So all the way from Tornillo ISD, vamos a darle la bienvenida a nuestros padres de familia que están allá sentados. Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias por acompañarnos hoy. Su voz es importante en esta conversación que tenemos. Así es que ayúdenos a desparramar la voz para que más padres de familia, más mamás de familia entiendan la importancia del bilingüismo y el beneficio que nos trae a todos nosotros, ¿verdad? En nuestros caminos, en nuestras profesiones y empezando con la voz de nuestras familias. Así es que muchas gracias. Otro aplauso, por favor. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we've been doing a lot of listening this morning. They've been doing a lot of listening and speaking. We have 2 more language domains we haven't practiced. And those are our reading and writing language domains. So this is how we're going to do it. I would like you to log into menti.com. It's kind of like Kahoot. And this is the avenue that we're going to use to ask our questions. So see, you're going to be able to read and write. And you're welcome for all those language domains being used today. Yes, we're swirling it, remember? Swirl. Speaking, writing, reading, and listening. So we log into menti.com, and then it's going to ask you for a code, and it's 792600. You can give us some love right there. Ooh, we got 6 loves right there. And then it will a little box will pop up, and you can ask a question. The burning questions you've been dying to ask of the panelists. You may go ahead and type it in there. And then we're going to do this for a little while, maybe 20 minutes or so, because we also want to allow time for feedback. But you can't, if we could adhere to just questions for now, that'd be great, and then we'll move on to the next slide, and it will allow you to then provide feedback, good, bad, and ugly, next steps, suggestions, any type of feedback. We'll do that after the question. Okay, so is anything popping up yet?
What is it supposed to look like?
A little box. You'll see a little box pop up for you to enter your question. And if somebody doesn't feel comfortable using their smart device and they just want to be brave and ask the question without, without the app, please don't hold back. Please do so. Just raise your hand.
That doesn't identify you, right?
No. We thought this was kind of cool because if you're shy, if you're shy, you can just type it in there. If you're not shy and you want to raise your hand, like Mr. Leiva.
I have a question. I'm from Santa Fe, ISD.
No.
I want to stay anonymous.
Okay. But I just said your name and we're live.
Yeah, but Leiva, there's many Leivas. So I won't take a lot of time, hopefully. So there's been discussions about creating, I don't think I need a microphone. There's been some conversations about creating classrooms, environments where there's rigor in language and content areas. There's been conversations about providing our teachers other types of PD opportunities, throwing money. There's a saying, don't throw money into the problem because it's not going to fix it. Well, let's throw some money into it first of all, right? And then we'll see. Yeah. And so my question is how is higher ed assisting school districts in preparing teachers, not for tomorrow, not even for today, but for 10 years ago, in the areas of language, in the areas of multicultural, and so that as districts, we like to believe that we're working very hard in those areas, professional development, but it's very difficult going to construction. You'd rather build a brand new home than remodel one, right? And so when we get teachers that have been in this business for a while, it takes a little more effort when we have to retrain them. And so the question is, how is higher ed, how can they provide us with some support? And how can we, as school districts, help you all to have some communications channels so that we can all do it together?
I can talk to that real quickly. I work with a lot of districts right now, and in the Department of Teacher Education, we do have coursework that speaks to diversity, multicultural, sheltered instruction, bilingual education, courses in Spanish, and there are a lot of new teachers, right? Pre-service teachers, right, that are coming in, and so that's the only way they know how to see the world when they get out there, which is good. But the real challenge comes with working with teachers who are in schools right now, and I say challenge because, and I won't say retrain, I will say they have to continue learning. That the learning can't stop, so as districts, we need to continue to offer ongoing professional development on all of these things, and then, this is the trick, right, is trying to find out when you can offer it. After school, on the weekend, online, blended, whatever we do, we have to do all of the above, because after school, I do a lot of after school. Teachers are tired. Nobody wants to give up their Saturday either. That's a hard one too, unless we pay them a stipend, which they deserve, which is fine. But as a person that works with districts, I ask you to consider not just a one-time shot, one training, but that when you bring someone in that is really going to be a partner with you, that you establish a schedule of continuous PD that goes on. Absolutely, because your teachers get to know you, you get to know the teachers, the issues, you become part of the family, the culture, the climate of learning that needs to be there. There's a lot on teachers' plates. There's a lot, so even when they hear dual, it's like, oh God, here we go, one more thing. Well, one more thing on my plate. And the way I put it is, it's not one more thing on your plate. This is your plate now. This is your plate, and everything that we do is around there. Dual is everywhere. It's not like it's a dual here and a different course there. It's everywhere. It's blended. It's active. It's guided. It's shared. It's all the initiatives that we have are incorporated. We do it through two languages. So in that respect, I ask supportive districts that they have continuous. It's not a one-time thing. One course isn't going to do it. One training is not going to do it either. You have to hear it multiple times. They say, the research says, that you have to hear it 14 times before it becomes part of your own language.
And I'll add to that too, because I work with the other now, and we've worked together for over 15 years now. And in the 15 years that I've been at UTEP, I know Atlanta does a lot of consulting, especially, but a lot of consulting outside of the city too as well. So what I've wondered about is why don't schools, districts, go to the university? Because we are paid to think about things and get others to think about things as well, to write about things, to get others to think about things. And sometimes we can be positioned to give you give teachers, administrators especially, a certain perspective that they may not have thought about before. But I see very little of that happening, so that there's a call for administrators, district leaders, to go to the UTEP, NMSU, places like that, and say, hey, who do you got there, that you can help us with this, to give us some perspective, because, but we understand too, like Elena said, teachers are very busy, administrators are very busy, maybe they don't have time to stop and think, oh, what can I do now, what should I do now, that has to be done right now, and I don't have time to go reach out to someone and talk to them or bring them in, and so, but maybe that's part of the solution, is getting administrators to stop to think and to get others to help them to stop and think from another perspective, and not necessarily an outsider, because we will be outsiders, but we are also we are trained in pedagogy. We have experience with pedagogy, but also we write about our research on pedagogy and policy and practices, and from a theoretical and conceptual, but also from a practical perspective as well. That's our job, and sometimes we sometimes need, just like a couple in a marriage, sometimes you need someone from the outside to let them get a different perspective about their marriage, and maybe that's what districts need and administrators need and schools need.
I want to make a comment to what Dr. Reyes just said. I do a lot of consulting, but pro bono. All right, I don't have money on here, not in my community. I don't charge my community. This is our university. This is our community. That's our responsibility to work together. When I see a partnership, all right? So I'm not making money on this. I charge outside of my community, but not in my community. But I will work with you when I see there's a long-term plan. When I can see that it's worth the time, it's worth the investment, it's gonna be hard work, I know that, because it takes time to craft and learn and process and make it yours, I know that, but there's gotta be a commitment on my end. You're right, we're very busy, but that's our responsibility. We are the partnership university here, you know, with several districts.
So it's creating that time.
Yes, it's time.
And that's why
Exactly.
I've created some time this morning. But just to be more specific, and I don't want to take all your time, and I know that you may not have the answer, but it's working with teachers after the fact, after they graduate,
That's right.
obviously, because
That's right.
you continue to learn every day.
Absolutely.
But it's what are the universities, in this case NMSU and UTEP, doing to create that within the teaching program in 4 years, so that teachers come already prepared, and you may not have the answer, but please ask the question somewhere else in there,
Yeah.
with a TESOL endorsement or with a bilingual endorsement, so that when we hire them, they already have
Yeah,
some
absolutely.
that we can
Okay.
anchor to.
So I can answer part of that, and that is we are preparing our teachers now in bilingual with the dual language, with the biliteracy, which is relatively new in classrooms, all right? There's a lot of learning to do of everybody, preparing them there. We have also created a certificate, which I'll put out there to all of you now. A certificate are 4 graduate courses. This is for the people that are already teachers. 4 graduate courses that they can count on a master's program if they want, but it endorses, it certifies that they've gone through dual language education. So it includes everything that you just mentioned in terms of languaging, sheltering, biliteracy, mindset, social cultural, how to do it, all of that. It includes that. The beauty of it is that it can attach to or be counted twice, double dipping, right? Counted twice on a master's degree. And we want to offer that for administrators too. That's there now. It's fully online now. So if anybody wants to talk money, there is money in professional development. That is great. And you may want to start with just 20 teachers or 25 teachers that you as a district support, pay for, you know, and all that. If you want face-to-face, the university is willing to offer a course in your district if you have enough people that are going to go there, so we can do a face-to-face. We can do courses that are parts of term. So when a regular course is 16 weeks, well, let's make it an 8-week course. And let's double dual language 101 with biliteracy in 8 weeks, you know, and we can do it blended, online and face-to-face or whatnot. We do all that. I work with coaches. I work with leaders, literacy leaders with the same kinds of things, because if they're going to be going into dual language, and the coaches and the mentors and all that, they need to know it. I would suggest you start with your mentors and coaches first, so that your teachers that start going to the training have that support in the district. So there are many ways that we're looking at that right now. But I'll tell you right now, the biggest piece of all of this is having enough time to dialogue, because it's a mind shift. It's a mind shift. I've been trained, and in grade they're going to say in transitional model, which is the goal is English. And we did Spanish, kind of sort of capirotada style, a little bit of everything for a little while. So they really didn't get all the benefits. Now we're saying no more. Languages are resources for one another, all right? So we're working at that. So we are available for that.
Muchas gracias por su respuesta.
No, gracias por la pregunta.
And if I may just share, I am an instructional coach, and just exactly what Dr. Elena Izquierdo is talking about, I have benefited from becoming a dual language mentor. I think that's very, very important, that our instructional coaches become trained for dual language so that we can come back to the campuses and continue supporting and developing our teachers, because time and money, right? We do not want our teachers outside of campus attending too many trainings.
Right.
But if they can train us instructional leaders, just as I've been trained for the last 2 years, thanks to the program that they have been able to offer us, I'm able to offer that to my campus and be there as a support system for our teachers to continue to have continuous PLCs monthly. Any questions that they need, they don't need to go searching anywhere. They've got it right there on campus.
And I don't want to send teachers away, but you can show that certificate, like the biliteracy seal, anywhere you go for a job and say, I've gone through this training.
Right.
And of course, you know, they don't know enough about it, and they see that you've gotten a certificate, absolutely, you're going to be very marketable. That's your language, marketable.
So, in speaking from the perspective of New Mexico State University, so we have developed a proactive solution and a reactive solution. So the reactive solution was to develop a partnership with Las Cruces Public Schools to have establish a cohort with the district to ensure that a group of their teachers who do not have their TESOL certification can obtain their TESOL certification. So what New Mexico State does is provide the instructors, and we go to their district. So we provide the classes at their district level. So it's more familiar, it's easier, it's more convenient. So we have done that, and we've also helped to pay for some instructional materials. So that's more a reactive strategy because we are, trying to catch up those teachers that have left the teacher certification program without the TESOL endorsement. But recently, we have made it a requirement that all teachers who obtain their licensure from New Mexico State in the elementary education field must have their TESOL endorsement or their bilingual endorsement before they can get their licensure. So that's a good step in the right direction. Now, I would argue we need it more at the secondary level, but we're working on that. So I do feel like that is a great step in the right direction. But I also agree that local districts do need to take more advantage of the universities in their communities, because I know I'm guilty of this too as being a district administrator with Las Cruces. We would hire people from University of Virginia or from Georgia or from California or wherever, and why do that when we have people around here? I know Dr. Izquierdo has come to Las Cruces several times, to assist with our programs, but I feel like there does have to be a stronger relationship with local universities and the school districts.
And right now with the push for ESL certification, I do ask you all to really watch that carefully. I know that the majority of times I see that it's a compliance issue.
Yes.
It's a compliance check mark. That does not ensure that those teachers really know how to scaffold and shelter language and integrated content. We need to be careful of that, right? So.
I'm just going to ask a quick question. This is related to what you just mentioned. Mr. Vasquez shared some data early, right? And I'm going to ask a question in Spanish. Uno de los grupos más vulnerables son los estudiantes de educación especial, /ELs, ¿verdad? Que tenemos maestros que, de educación especial que no están certificados bilingües. Por eso tenemos el mayor número de estudiantes que sus padres están dejando los servicios. No tenemos ese apoyo. Basically, the question is related to Mr. Leiva's question at the beginning. What are the universities are doing to prepare those teachers to support campuses and try to avoid that? I mean, it's kind of like, yes, we're pushing towards the bilingualism, but we're not preparing, our teachers enough to support that.
I agree.
I mean, it's very sad to see, parents that they don't have that choice to say, you know what, I do have a dual-coded student, just for lack of better words, but we're not providing the right support.
That's right. And you're talking about a national syndrome that's going on, not just local, but we have no excuse in this area. We should really have it together in this area. Once again, I'm going back to, it's a certification issue, right? I've already talked, we're gonna start, and go to that, okay? Because we need a certification. If you don't have a certification, you're gonna have those two specialties separate coming to your school. That's it. And that's the way it's gonna be dealt with in departments and everything. We're talking about a whole child here. So we would love to have that certification there, and then we need a pipeline. I would love to find the funds, maybe collaboratively or through a grant, and say, all right, let's start with your district. What's a pipeline there that we have that we can start preparing these people to become, if they're bilingual, we'll put in the special ed and then add biliteracy. If they're special ed, then we'll put in the bilingual and add the biliteracy and catch it and make the best of both worlds. I think that's the way we need to go. And I think we need to place it in schools as interns and to learn from them, because the child, I mean, I lived this 100 years ago in my school as a principal when they would come and they want to test my kid in English, and I'm thinking, he speaks Spanish. So he came out really low. It wasn't just Spanish. Some of our kids are already bilingual when they come in pre-K. They know some words in English and some words in Spanish. So if you give me a test in one language, you're not capturing everything I know, and my score will come down. So then we find out, okay, we tested him in English and Spanish. He does have the special need. He does have the special issue. So now the services, they're in English. Hello. So what do we do, right? So we have work to do. I agree with you wholeheartedly, but there is something that we can do if we come together and work for them. Absolutely.
Do you mind addressing a couple of these questions?
Oh, we've got questions. Good.
Yeah, so we got questions. So,
I don't see the question.
is one of the,
No.
yeah, they'll show up here. They'll be right here. Let's bring the some business aspect to this, and regarding GPA. GPA has become a barrier for undergraduate professionals for getting an internship or a job. How can we change this to stop being a barrier for low socioeconomic bilinguals?
Okay, sorry, trying to read the question. I haven't let it on.
So if a student comes to you and his GPA is low, you turn him away from your call center.
Does the call center
You turn him away from Ocho too?
No, so it all depends on as far as the business is concerned. In every organization is different, right? So depending on what we're looking for, the level of people we want to hire for. So for an internship, I mean, everything is looked at, right? Your education, you're bilingual, your experience. So the more you have, the better, of course. But no, we don't really usually just turn down because you have a low GPA. Again, so when somebody hires, right, when somebody's looking to bring in somebody to an organization, there's different tools that we have to help us make that decision to stay consistent, right? So we have testing, we have interviews, we have the applications, we have the resume, we have sometimes tests that we give. So once all that is completed on the onboarding process, that's when we determine the best candidate. So it's not only based on GPA. I mean, we have people that have probably very low GPAs or just an associated with a low GPA, and they're there. And as an organization, it is our job to make them successful, to make them better, and to help them move up in the organization. But to that question, no, we don't turn down people with low GPAs. It's a broader aspect, just other than just your grades. So, at least on my part.
Yeah, on our field, more recently, due to the lack of qualified personnel, I've noticed when I've got an interview, it plays a part. Obviously, like anything, I mean, you're required to get your titles and things like that. But in our field, like the gentleman said, I mean, we test outside of the theory. Our field is not 100% theory. Unfortunately, there's some professionals that think becoming an engineer is following the book. Well, a book is made under perfect conditions. Out in the real world, nothing's perfect. And if you can't think outside the box, whether you have a 4.0, to that doesn't work for us. I mean, I wasn't bright, the sharpest knife in the toolbox, and here I am. Because our experience, your way to think outside the box, and the way that you can adapt to severe situations within your workforce adds more value than a number. Don't get me wrong, I mean, it's good to know that you were able to pass calculus and hydraulics and things of that nature, but if you can apply them other than a book, well then maybe this is the wrong profession for you. I mean, it's hard to learn, and that's why I noticed that in our careers and degrees nowadays, and especially at UTEP, they're implementing more hands-on training, internships. Now they have an actual degree, which is Bachelor's of Construction Management in Engineering. Those, when I graduated, were all just classes under our curriculum. Now this is a whole new degree because of the need of these personnel. I mean, before an MBA was trying to manage construction projects. But yeah, the finances were really good, you went out to the field and you saw the construction, the inspection, and the delivery of the projects, and you're like, where's the connection? Yeah, you save money, but the road looks worse than when it was before. So people started making connections that you're like, no, you don't need an accountant to be running a construction job, or vice versa. So now those degrees embody us to become accountants in construction, quality control inspectors, engineers, first of all, that's our main title. So, I mean, the way I've seen it in the past interviews and jobs, the GPA plays a very minimal part. And like my colleagues have saying, I mean, throughout the new generation of people that interview and hire, I've been to interviews where there's no questions asked. I went to an interview, they gave me a set of plans. Because people think you becoming an engineer, that you should know it. And they highlight a phasing agenda of how we're gonna do this street in 2 phases, this time frame. Come up with your plan. Once you're done, turn it in, turn around, and we'll call you. And I was able to ask them, what's the issue? It's like, we need to see how well you think with very little detail. Because at community meetings, those are the first comments that come out from citizens. So you're gonna block my driveway for 3 months? Where am I supposed to go? If you don't have that in you and you can't explain it, and especially in English and in Spanish, then we have issues. Because my boss doesn't want having calls at 4 in the afternoon that I'm not answering my phone and that I'm not giving her answers that she wants to get. So I mean, it has to change, and I've seen it change. Hopefully other business models start adapting this, because a lot of good candidates aren't getting the opportunities that they deserve just because of a number, just because the English language in our part is a barrier that we can't communicate properly. And so I mean, it impacts everybody, and then like you said, you have a doctor, an engineer working Uber, or whatever. Not to knock it down or anything, but I mean, those things need to be taken into consideration.
And I think you're talking at the university. We have this part of UTEP now, which is called the UTEP Edge, and it's that success for students, student success. So what we're asking the business community is to provide more internship opportunities. So think about teachers. I mean, right now we're looking at the residency model at the university, where they spend a year in schools. All right, a year in schools, which is, I mean, I see my student interns right now at the Mesita School, which is the school for the dual language training, and they're exhausted. They're working. They look at my teachers. They're like calling and everything. And I went up, pero quería trabajar, ¿verdad? And she laughs. But the thing is that they're going to be better prepared on that first day of school when they're the teacher for the first time. That's the whole purpose of this. Now, here we go with money again. That means they can't work. So now we have to find the monies so that we can provide them stipends or whatever, so they can do that. All right, so it brings down to money. But in the long run, we're going to have a better prepared person.
So everybody wins.
What was mentioned earlier about the ability, what you're talking about is the ability to problem solve, right? And so, in construction, when we see the construction on I-10, my wife and I and the kids, how do they do this? How do they plan? How do they prepare? The logistics are just blows my mind. I wouldn't even know where to begin on how to address the logistics. But logistics is problem solving. And problem solving actually goes to the point of, and the rationale behind biliteracy and bilingualism, in that you build on the language that the student knows. And when they are able to use the language that they know, they're able to learn to think in the language that they know, coming from home, from the learning and working and surviving and communicating in the world around them in the language that they know, their home language. They learn to think. And we do it backwards so many times. And so many districts, the vast majority of the districts around the country, we do it backwards, that you take that away from them, learn English, and then, oh, by the way, you can learn foreign language, just like all the privileged white kids do, and we look at you. So, and that's the way we do it in this
They
country.
never learn their accent marks.
Yeah. So
So the ability to think in the first language, home language, is what is one of the key components, I think, that goes to being able to be successful in the workforce, to be college ready. And that is, I think, goes to one of the other points that we mentioned earlier, to sell to the parents. It's like, your child has this ability, has this tool, has this resource. Let them build on it, let them develop it, let them practice it, let them mold it, and then learn English. And maybe that's one way to sell to the parents what it is that they already have, that they don't need to get from what they're already getting at home, and that they can build on that. And the schools can provide the additional resources to build on that, to learn to think in math and science and social studies, and language and literacy in their home language, and then in that additional language. The ability to problem solve. And so I think that goes to questions about college readiness as well, which was brought up earlier, but I saw one earlier. Do we want to go to this question actually?
No,
So,
it doesn't matter.
or do we have a question in the audience? Yes.
Bueno, yo lo voy a mencionar en español porque obviamente no tenemos que pedir el permiso de hablar en nuestro idioma. La verdad, quiero agradecerles. Mi nombre es Evelyn, yo soy una estudiante de UTEP, todavía no me gradué, estoy en mi senior year. Estoy trabajando para ser futura maestra. A todos los maestros que están aquí, la verdad, son mis héroes. Quiero llegar a ser la excelente maestra que son ahorita ustedes. Y quiero traer al espacio la pregunta, de hecho, de lo de GPA la hice yo. Yo trabajo con muchos estudiantes que son ingenieros, que son business majors, y ellos mencionan que llegan a las career fairs y si ven un GPA menos de 3.0, literalmente les regresan su resume. Y quiero que sepan ustedes que la verdad es tan importante que ustedes vengan a nuestras universidades y que nos enseñen que ustedes, yo fui como donde tú estabas y tú puedes hacerlo. Y son estas conexiones que se necesitan para que nosotros como estudiantes que vamos a la profesional podamos ver que sí se puede, y no nomás para nosotros, sino también para los padres. Yo veo la mesa de atrás y digo, ay, está mi mamá o lo que sea, aunque no lo está. Porque mi mamá nos decía, yo los traje aquí y dije que quería que nacieran aquí para que crecieran, pero mi mamá era de esas personas que trabajan en la maquila y yo tenía que ir a dejar a mi hermano en el camión a las 6:30 para llegar a tiempo a la escuela. Sí, son esas cosas que yo lo hice porque mi mamá me trajo, pero mi mamá no tuvo la oportunidad de estar ahí, pero ella me quiere ver como ahorita están aquí. Para mí están aquí dos grandes héroes para mí, que es Georgina y Dr. Izquierdo, son mis mentoras, y la verdad ustedes yo sé que pueden hacer lo mismo para muchos estudiantes de la universidad. Gracias.
So, la pregunta y los que están ahí atrás, es muy importante entender y comprender que cuando vas a los job fairs, hay compañías que están buscando empleados específicos, ¿verdad? Y es difícil competir, ¿sí? Entonces, entre más experiencia tengas, más cosas a tu favor tengas, ser bilingüe es un beneficio, ¿entiendes? O sea, todas esas son palomitas de que, ok, entonces si ya tengo, por decir, 5 resumes con un GPA de 3.0 y todo lo que ando buscando, vienes tú y tienes todo menos el GPA, ¿sí? Entonces a lo mejor no te va a funcionar. Entonces la recomendación es que, como dicen en inglés, the more resourceful you are, the more marketable you are, the better chance you're going to have to, one, get a good job, and two, compete and stay competitive at the same time. I mean, so I think, pienso yo que el hecho de ser bilingüe es una gran ventaja, porque cuando estás en una compañía, muchas posiciones requieren que seas bilingüe. Entonces, si tienes todo lo demás y el ser bilingüe, muchas cosas bonitas.
Do they ever consider just looking at the GPA of the last 2 years, you know? Not for the 4 or 5 years, because then you really have better information. Just a thought. Like in sports, you know, who wins the Super Bowl?
Exactly.
The one that gets there.
Right, and to your point is, I don't know who. Yeah.
Great analogy.
Como los Cowboys, ¿no?
Sorry, change the subject.
Ese es otro panel. Pero sí, o sea, I don't know which company you're referring to, but yes, I've never heard of somebody like literally rejecting someone just for the GPA and not consider the actual experience, you know, how marketable they are, conversation with the individual. To us, as business leaders, it's very important to see what you offer, what you can offer, how you can make the company better, and how we can make you better, work together to succeed. I mean, and that the GPA doesn't really tell you. Having an education helps you become a better person. You know what I mean? Be more knowledgeable, be more marketable, but that's not going to define who you can become. And that's where we come in as leaders, and that's where your preparation, you know, comes in as well, and your willingness to succeed. So we see it, we look at all that, and the fact that I see your GPA, just give it back to you. Whoever's doing that, shouldn't work it.
It's not very good.
Yeah.
There's a study, and I want to say it was Harvard, but it may have been Stanford. And they took the high GPA engineer, and they gave the same problem solving. Here's construction paper, here's glue, here's scissors. They gave it to first graders, and they gave it to college seniors. Who was more creative? The first graders. Right, and so I've never heard of what you're saying, but I've also probably never worked in that field, right? But I think that in the 21st century, employers are looking for the problem solving and the innovation and the creativity. While your GPA may be fantastic, right? But I don't think that that's the whole package. I don't think it's all reflective or all inclusive of. Because when we see 5- and 6-year-olds more creative than college seniors,
Yeah.
something's wrong.
So it's also probably to give feedback to the people that, you know, share this with you, you know, ensure that they're looking for an organization that thinks that they do, and that they can relate to, because that's important. And I mean, if I go into an organization and you're going to stop me from succeeding because of the GPA, you probably don't want to be there. You know what I mean? So it's important when you're looking for job hunting. You know, we're also looking for you. You know, it's not just like I'm lucky. You're lucky because I'm hiring you. We see it the other way around. I'm glad you're coming in because we need you. So I want to make sure I sell myself to you as a company, you know, to make sure you're fit. So whoever's not doing that, probably not a good fit.
And we probably need a bigger discussion with the business sector and the university, because I've heard of students that are going into business and they can't get into internships because they don't have the GPAs. You know, the businesses. So that does happen. So this is a conversation that needs to take place.
Creo que hay una pregunta allá.
En realidad no es pregunta, más bien es una opinión como madre de familia, como algo como tocante lo que estaba diciendo ella, que para mí sería muy bueno, se me hace una muy buena opción que vayan personas como los dos señores aquí presentes, que son profesionales y que tienen experiencia explicándole a los alumnos, a los muchachos que se van a graduar, a los que están en la escuela, la importancia de ser bilingües, que sí hay manera de hacer más dinero siendo bilingües, porque la mayoría de los estudiantes ahorita están pensando que no es lo importante el español porque estamos en Estados Unidos y todas las pruebas, todo lo que sea que estamos haciendo aquí es en inglés, el español no es importante. Y a mí me gustó mucho escucharlos a ellos y a mí se me hace muy buena idea que hubiera personas que fueran así y hablar a las escuelas con los estudiantes, decirles, no, es que sí, claro que vas a hacer mucho dinero también con el puro inglés, pero si eres bilingüe, mira, va a pasar esto así, 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 ya en lo profesional, cuando tengas un trabajo, una compañía, te va a dar el doble de dinero o el doble de posibilidades si eres bilingüe. Y, por ejemplo, ahorita los estudiantes ya los grandecitos, ¿verdad? De junior high para arriba, pues ya se los ponen como una clase elective, algo así. Pero a mí me dio mucho gusto saber que, por ejemplo, ya mi nieta ya empezó Head Start y ahí ya les están dando bilingüe. Se me hizo padrísimo, porque mi nieta creció, ella nació en Nebraska y mi nuera no le gusta hablar español. La niña habla puro inglés y nosotros le hablamos español y ella batalla mucho. Y oírla que ya está comenzando a hablar en español para mí es bien importante. Qué bueno que desde chiquitos ya esté comenzando eso, todo ese trabajo que ustedes están haciendo para ayudar a eso, a que el programa bilingüe sea un hecho, ya va en camino, porque ya empezó con mi nieta. Mis hijos, los grandes, como le digo, sí saben español y todo, pero sí tienen ese pensamiento de que no es tan importante ser bilingües. Se los agradezco.
Y a su comentario, el ser bilingüe La meta sí tiene sus ¿cómo le llaman? Sus beneficios. Ya, todo pocho yo. O sea, me acuerdo que mi papá, que en paz descanse, siempre nos decía, la educación y ser bilingüe, o sea, no es mucho para hacer más dinero, o sea, es para hacerlo uno mejor persona, ¿sabe cómo? O sea, el hecho de que conoce uno 2 idiomas, 2 culturas, y se puede comunicar diferente con diferentes personas, y entender a las personas, eso en sí, o sea, ya es un beneficio. El dinero y las posiciones, o sea, eso es pilón, eso viene aparte, ¿sí? Porque uno va a ser feliz y va a sobresalir donde quiera que esté, lo que quiera que haga, entendiendo más la cultura a otra gente, hablar 2 idiomas, y le da a uno la confianza de que si llega a haber una oportunidad, yo puedo, yo entiendo, yo sé, ¿sabe cómo? Entonces ese es el beneficio mayor de ser bilingüe, no mucho de ser más dinero, o sea, eso se puede prestar y sí, puede ser, pero todos sabemos que en el paso no se presta mucho de ser más dinero. Pero como decimos, ojalá eso cambie en un futuro, ¿verdad? Porque tenemos una cultura muy rica aquí. O sea, pero se va a un otro lado, o le toca la oportunidad de estar con una compañía que le va a ayudar a sobresalir. Si ya trae esa fundación, va a volar así rápido.
Déjeme le digo nada más una experiencia que yo tuve en un call center, así, hablando al contrario de inglés, de las personas que no hablamos mucho el inglés. Ahorita ya lo hablo mucho mejor, pero en ese tiempo que yo me aplicaba en un call center, en ese tiempo yo era la viejita del grupo porque yo tenía 35 y los muchachos eran de 18, 19, 20, unos muchachos que estaban en high school se me acababan de graduar. El caso es que fui y todos me dijeron, no la vas a hacer porque no hablas nada de inglés. Y o sea, tienes que saber mucho inglés para el call center. A lo que voy es por que cuando uno se esfuerza puede, ¿verdad? Pues yo me aventé y fui. Me tocó a mí, ya ve que le hacen una prueba a uno que tiene que hacer unas llamadas. Fui. Y así, hablando como tipo esta Sofía Vergara, ¿verdad? I was speaking like this, like, hello, my name is Elvia, and this is in the, así, ¿verdad? Entonces, gracias a Dios, ¿verdad? Que me tocó una gringa viejita, porque se oía la voz que estaba viejita. And I was speaking like this, no, miss, this and that, and luego, no sé qué dije, pero dije una palabra, una backward, yo sé que fue una backward, porque todos los muchachos estaban... oh my God, oh, así todos así, pero yo sí, entonces la supervisor me dijo, sígale, ¿verdad? Y yo no les hice caso a ellos, so yo, I'm sorry, miss, I'm sorry, I know I said something wrong, but I'm sorry. And she said, no, it's okay, mija, it's okay, but she was like, it's okay, mija, continue, she said, and you, oh, thank you. And then I started, I continued and everything, and I finished the questions and everything, and she said, oh, okay, mija, thank you very much, and this and that, and I hope you get your job, she told me. And then la supervisora, éramos 10, y yo fui una de las 5 personas que agarraron, y me dijo que nada más por eso, por haber hecho el esfuerzo, y porque no me importó lo que dijeron y todo, yo lo hice, yo agarré el trabajo, y nomás les dice, ándale, que si sirve mucho hacer, como yo por ejemplo, yo le digo a lo que voy es que yo a mis hijos les digo, así es como yo hice el esfuerzo de aprender inglés, pues, y que me ha ayudado muchísimo eso, entonces ustedes también, si son bilingües, si saben bien el español como debe de ser y el inglés también, valen por 2 mis hijos, y el que es buen gallo en cualquier gallinero canta, ¿verdad?
Un punto clave que dijo, que contó ahorita, viene siendo que usted sí cree en ser bilingüe y tener la biliteracidad. Y los niños del 6º, 7º, 8º no lo creen porque no ven el valor. Pero los niños que entran en Head Start, como su nieta o sobrina, no me acuerdo quién, allí pueden empezar. Y son los padres de familia los cuales tienen que comunicar ese mensaje. Así como ellos pueden ir a la escuela, y yo también veo que tienen un gran valor para hacer eso. Ustedes como padres de familia también los necesitamos, que se corra la voz entre los otros padres de familia, porque un padre a otro padre tiene más poder, ¿verdad? Porque creen que tiene más confianza. Gracias.
Yo únicamente quería hacer un comentario, ¿verdad? Primeramente felicitar al panel que está aquí esta mañana por ser nuestra voz, porque es bien importante que estén aquí en El Paso. Fue un orgullo, un honor que nos tocó venir aquí esta mañana y participar con este panel de profesionales y saber de que todos hablan español. Y para que los padres entiendan un poquito mejor. Tuve la oportunidad hace 19 años de atender a YouTube y Dr. Izquierdo fue mi maestra, un instituto intenso de verano sobre el programa bilingüe. Y creo que es un placer estar aquí con Ms. Izquierdo, ¿verdad? Porque es un legado y siempre se nos dijo, el que es bilingüe vale por dos. So, para nosotros nada debe ser imposible. Gracias por seguir fomentando, ¿verdad? Y llevando a cabo ese cimiento, sembrando para que algún día florezca y pues que viva la educación bilingüe. Gracias.
I'd like to address the additional benefits of bilingualism and biliteracy aside from the monetary support, and that is about identity, about how language is so tied to your identity, for your family, for your culture. So I am Japanese and Korean American, 4th generation, and I don't speak Korean or Japanese because my parents were, because my grandparents didn't want my parents to speak a language other than English. So my parents never grew up knowing the language of their ancestors or of their parents, and I did not grow up understanding the language of my ancestors and parents, and I feel like a part of me is lost. I feel like like something was taken from me, and I don't have that pride that I should have in who I am, in my identity and my culture. And I think that is a shame, and I never want to see another child have to go through that, or another family have to go through that, to be ashamed of who they are, where they came from, and what language they speak, because it has a devastating effect on the identity and social development of children. So, so yes, the benefits are much greater than monetary benefits, and I think it's definitely tied to our identities.
Okay, so everybody's looking at me. So we don't have enough time to go over all the questions, but I did want to address the one that said something about why our districts not represented. That was intentional. Pretty much every district is represented among the participants, so I really appreciate that. That was very exciting. But we wanted to start out with this type of panel, because they are leaders. So are you, but again, it's like we're preaching to the choir. So you are welcome to put it in there under next steps so that we don't stop the conversation here today. We want to know what else can we do as a community. We have the university people that are telling us, hey, we're here, use us. I know I've talked to Dr. Reyes. He came and I was a principal in my previous life. And so he came to my school and did, he brought his students, we did a summer thing. Dr. Izquierdo, of course, works with a lot of the districts. I'm not sure, well, Dr. Han, of course, works with New Mexico, but they are all here, we are all here with the same goal in mind, our English learners, dual language education, social cultural competence, equity, all of that. And so, and now you guys are walking away with even greater ideas about inviting the two gentlemen to come. So you guys make yourselves available. You're going to be very busy, but it's also, I mean, again, it's good for the community, right? It's good for the community. We have to embrace it because we have to lead by example. We have to. And so like Dr. Han said, something was taken away from her, and we've had conversations about how sometimes our own children were not educated because we were not educated and we were afraid or whatever. So we have a panel of experts here. Oh, and Ms. Perez, how can I forget? I mean, she is the voice for the whole region. So come on, she's in her corner. I certainly She might be a little bit busier though with her calendar, but.
So I will tell you, my district is the largest geographic district in the nation. But this was one of our signature priorities. We worked also with Mr. Cabrera, and I think everybody in his district that has anything to do with dual language. And for
I don't know how many Saturday mornings and late evenings, not only to get the state standards, but also the policy with the funding. And we do all of this work pro bono. So I'm not saying that that your time is not valuable. We don't get paid, so we have no money to give you. But if the collaboration is what you want, or if just sitting in your space and us listening, so that way when we go write additional policies and evolving policies and flexible policies, because there's no policy that's perfect, right? And every legislative session, it will change, it can change, because as much as we like to think it's written in stone, nothing is written in stone. But we do all of that pro bono, and we do spend far more time with our communities than in our own homes. So don't feel that we can't or that we won't, because we will. We do.
You do. Thank you. And I also served with you on the dual language task force with the PISD. And making it policy, that was huge. That was huge, because we talked about how superintendents may come and go, principals come and go, lots of things come and go. But policy doesn't come and go as easily, right? So there has to be a process. So I know that was a huge endeavor, and you two ladies were key with that. So I appreciate being a part of that. So anyway, this could go on and on, because as you can see, this is my passion as well as everybody here. And I appreciate you coming. I see I see a blank screen, but I don't anymore. Thank you for your suggestions, because I will take a look at those. And we will collectively come up with, okay, how else can we support each other? It's like you said, you guys don't have money, neither do I. But we do have passion, we do have expertise, and we are driven. And again, we have the same goal in mind, our English learners and our programs. And Mr. Jose Velasquez, do you want to say anything? I do have a little token of appreciation, but I gotta walk way over there. Want to say anything?
May I say something while he gets to the microphone? There were a lot of good ideas that came out of here, and I'm thinking maybe the region can take the lead here and maybe call special committees or steering committees or whatever. For example, the bilingual special ed, right? That's going to take work. We could come from here and we could work on it and start moving forward.
Yes,
Absolutely.
So Region 19 definitely welcomes those opportunities to partner and to collaborate. There's great momentum that can come out of this. I think we sense the level of enthusiasm, the positive vibes, the energy that's just emanating from the voices that were not only in the panel, but the voices of the parents, the voices, amongst the districts represented here, not limited to Texas. We have Southern New Mexico represented. We have West Texas represented. We have also, students going to UTEP from Juarez also represented. So, we have a very nice geographical resource, in ourselves that we need to go ahead and push forward to shape the narrative. This challenge of meeting the needs of English learners across the United States, we're working with the students right now that are basically going to be the future of this country. So we have an advantage in the sense that we have experiences that run deep in terms of what we have to say, to add to the narrative, to shape, and to hopefully make positive changes in places, like South Carolina, places like Nebraska. You mentioned that, your granddaughter is from there. So I have my grandson who's in Kansas. So, even though we're here, our voice is going to be heard way over there. So thank you all very much for participating. Thank you for the panelists for attending today. Thank you for your voices.
So thank you. I just want to say thank you for everybody for your, as a moderator today. I thank you for the invitation to do this. I appreciate it, and thank you to our panelists. Gracias a todos por venir. Y the next steps, los próximos pasos, yo creo, no solo pensar en estas buenas ideas, but acción. Necesitamos acción. Gracias por venir. Have a good day.
So just
Science of the science of reading and Spanish
Okay, so we just have a little token of appreciation, and like I said, we don't have money, okay? I don't have money. We are educators, but our theme was Sembrando el Futuro. You saw the little cosita, I don't know what it's called. The little label on the flowers and on the agenda and so on and so forth. Right here. I'm not a gardener, but you know the little stakes that you put that you labeled your garden? Yeah. So, and then, so we have a little flower pot and some seeds, and hopefully you all have a green thumb, not like me, and a book to commemorate your time with, like I know you made time for us this morning, so we really appreciate it. So these are for the gentlemen because they don't have a flower. Yes. And then, Dr. Reyes. Thank you. And since estamos sembrando el futuro, pero las cosechas le cayó al jefe. Aquí está nuestro fruto, ¿verdad? De lo que estamos sembrando aquí. Representa. Ay, y ustedes pueden usar la bolsita para ir de compras al mercado, como antes, ¿ok? Así que, you're very welcome, Dr. Izquierdo. I see a hand up. ¿Qué pasó, Elba? Dr. Esa López.
Well, I'm also Professor Edita, but un plan de acción. We are reviving, we're starting again our SUAVE, Southwest Association for Bilingual Educators. And so this is a good time, I think, to invite you all to send out flyers for getting us together again.
For getting us together again as bilingual educators. I'm a retired bilingual educator. I was a bilingual teacher for like 25 years in the regular classroom. Then I retired. Then I decided to go back to school, get my PhD at NMSU. And yes, and then I went to Boise, Idaho to do bilingual education over there, but I missed my home. So I came back. I'm now at UTEP. But we had a strong bilingual group association. And parents are also, los padres de familia, bienvenidos para estar con nuestro grupo, unidos juntos. So if we do send you, and our president is Anabel over there, I'm the treasurer, and I still have very little money. But we will welcome you all to please help us revive this organization, and that's a new plan, I think, that we can carry on.
Dr. Reza,
Yes.
I have 2 speakers for you. Here.
Yes, yes. Gracias.
There's an announcement.
Okay, I have an announcement for you all. Actually, I'm going to extend an invitation. Tornillo ISD is very happy to announce that we'll be hosting our first annual English Language Learners Parent Conference. It's going to be on March the 7th. It's going to be on a Saturday. It's going to be a half a day. We have a lot of things to share with you, from books, a lot of incentives for the parents. So hopefully we're looking into making this a regional conference, but we'll be hosting the first annual. So everyone is welcome.
All right, well, unless somebody wants to sing to the group, thank you all so very much. Y'all have a good day. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.